Good morning. It is 6 o'clock on Wednesday, May the 6th. We have more sunshine, but a few clouds with us. A little bit of breeze and a high to hit 18 degrees. That's what you can expect. A full forecast for the rest of the week is coming up, but right now the news begins. And here with the 6 o'clock report, it's Lisa Best.
Good morning. With the warm weather we've had over the past few days, BC has set a new record for May for electricity use. BC Hydro says demand peaked Monday at around 7,600 megawatts. That's the highest level seen in the month of May, especially so early in the year, as many people turn on air conditioners and fans to keep their cool. The utility is expecting electricity demand to remain above average until temperatures start to cool, which is starting today, even though today is high as 18. Nearly 70% of BC households now have some form of air conditioning inside. To the waters now, where BC Ferry is modifying its policy around transporting electric vehicles. The carrier will now accept mobile EVs that are undamaged or have minor cosmetic damage. Stuff that doesn't compromise the vehicle's frame or battery integrity. Travel restrictions will remain in place for any vehicle not making the cut. The new policy goes into effect on Tuesday, May 19th, immediately following the long weekend. The new rules do align with federal transport of dangerous good requirements and establish marine safety procedures. Still in the water, this is Emergency Preparedness Week. And yes, your phone or TV radio is going to light up at 2 this afternoon. For that warning, this will just be a test of the alert system. But a Canadian researcher who studied the Tracy Arm Fjord tsunami says the catastrophic potential of such tsunamis need to be better monitored. Millions of rock fell into the Alaskan fjord last August, setting off a wave with sections as tall as 481 meters. It is among one of the largest tsunamis ever recorded. Could come close to touching the tip of the CN Tower in Toronto. The fjord can see more than 20 ships a day in the summer, but none, luckily, were in the tsunami's path at the time. The study published in the journal Science says the warming of cold regions means similar hazards could happen in the future. Dan Sugar is an earth environmental professor at the University of Calgary, one of the researchers in the study. Sugar says that this is a warning sign that there better be better monitoring of a violent potential for fjords and glacial recession. That's especially true along the BC coast, where, of course, there's increased tanker traffic if that new oil pipeline is built. Premier David Eby responding to allegations made by former Vancouver mayor during question period yesterday at the BC legislature. The opposition Conservatives were asked comments from Kennedy Stewart that a member of the cabinet was under investigation by CSIS and the RCMP for collaborating with China's government. And the Premier says some members of cabinet were aware.
I have never once been briefed by either the RCMP or CSIS about concerns related to any government caucus member or cabinet member, period. If I had been, members of the public should be aware, should know, that I would not hesitate to act. And at a minimum, if there was concern about a cabinet member, given the sensitive information that cabinet has access to, I would remove that person from cabinet.
Eby noted that he has top secret clearance and receives briefings regularly from both CSIS and the RCMP about security efforts. More on this coming up on CFAX at 7:50. The Canadian Press reporter, legislative reporter Wolfgang Deppner will be on to unpack some of these allegations. The Oak Bay Tea Party will not be having a parade, but the party will happen. All of their events, including the Midway and entertainment, will continue as scheduled June 5th through 7th. Society spokesperson Sandy Germain says they are hopeful to bring the parade back next year.
Well, we just felt we didn't have the necessary time to be able to go through and make sure that we had everything in place that's required from the recommendations that came down in the report from Justice Hinkson. So it was a hard decision, but we chose to err on the side of caution and make sure that next year we know exactly what the procedures, protocol requirements are.
A similar scenario, of course, occurred earlier this month. The Esquimalt Buccaneers Day Parade, which is supposed to go this weekend, will not be happening. And BC Seniors Advocate says older homeowners should still consider deferring property taxes. This after he was contacted by residents about a change to the program. Dan Levitt says the program can still help people manage costs despite higher interest rates, noting there has been inaccurate information shared about the changes. Levitt says concerned residents contacting his office often felt they were targeted by the government and urged the province to act quickly in boosting services and programs intended to support seniors and their families. The recent changes to the property deferment program include moving new deferrals to carry compounded interest instead of lower, simple rates. That's your news to 6:05. Your CFAX 1070 news poll question this morning. We're asking, since this is Emergency Preparedness Week, are you prepared for a weather-related emergency? 51% on our website saying no. You can vote at CFAX1070.com, the iHeartRadio app, and it's on Twitter X as well. I'm Lisa Best, your news time, 6:07.
Thanks, Lisa. Good morning. Sun's up, birds are chirping. We're already into this Wednesday morning in Victoria. 11 degrees is the temperature I'm seeing right now, and we'll get you a full forecast in just a moment. Right now, we kick it over to the sports. Lots going on. WHL prospects draft happening this evening. Yesterday, it was the NHL. Today, it's the WHL. And for us here, the Victoria Royals have a number 7 pick and a number 5 selection. That one acquired through a trade. The Kelowna Rockets will select first overall when that gets underway at 5 o'clock this afternoon. And in the BCHL, the playoffs continue. Nanaimo has taken a 3-0 lead in the Coastal Conference Final. They blanked Prince George 4-0 last night. Next game's tonight, also in Nanaimo. That's where it was last night. And in the NHL, the Colorado Avalanche beat the visiting Minnesota Wild 5-2 last night to take a 2-0 lead in the second round best-of-7 NHL playoff series. Game 3 will be happening on Saturday. So the NHL draft was yesterday. Toronto Maple Leafs were the big winners. They overcame the odds to win the draft lottery and will have the number 1 pick at next month's draft in Buffalo. It's the third time the Leafs will pick first. They took Austin Matthews in 2016 and Wendell Clark in 1985. Vancouver Canucks, for their part, they will pick third. That's how the balls all fell yesterday, followed by the Calgary Flames at number 6 and the Winnipeg Jets at number 8. To baseball, where the Toronto Blue Jays will be looking to snap a 3-game losing skid when they face the Tampa Bay Rays in the third and final game in their series in Florida today. Left-hander Patrick Corbin will be on the mound for the 16-20 Jays, who lost 4-3 last night, despite taking a 3-2 lead into the 8th inning, but they couldn't hold on to it. And we have the NFL and its officials moving closer towards some kind of agreement to avoid a work stoppage. A person with knowledge of the discussion told the Associated Press that after a lengthy stalemate, negotiations have reached a point where the NFL Referees Association is planning to have a ratification vote this week. And the NFL's collective bargaining agreement with the NFL Referees Association is set to expire at the end of the month. That's your CFAX Sports to 6:09. CFAX Morning Show brought to you by Thrifty Foods. At Thrifty Foods, Happy is celebrating Mom. This Saturday from 10 until 1, the first 200 kids aged 12 and under are invited to decorate a free cake for Mom at all locations. So on the roads, it's early. There's not much happening as far as volume delays or crashes or accidents at this time. Cook Street paving will be back on at 7 again. Watch out for those delays between Bay and Hillside. That is a feature all this week. At BC Ferries, no sailing waits as of yet, but we're about 90% full on the 7 o'clock from Swartz Bay to Tsawwassen. That is referring to vehicle deck space. As always, you're fine if you're a foot passenger. And for the weather today, it is mainly sunny. We are getting quite breezy today. We kind of had that yesterday a little bit. If you're by the Wandafuka Strait, you definitely felt those winds cooling things down. It's going to be the story again today with highs of about 18 degrees, but cooler by the water. For tonight, clear skies, still breezy. In fact, the wind might be the strongest into the evening, gusting up to 80 kilometers an hour, kind of into the nighttime hours. Lows down to 9 tonight. Mix of sun and cloud tomorrow. We will see very similar temperatures again, highs into the high teens. Mix of sun and cloud for Friday. Still sunny on the weekend. It might even get a bit warmer again on the weekend, around about 20 degrees. No heat wave coming at us like we just saw over last weekend, but still very pleasant for the whole next 7 days. Business news. We're waiting for the opening bells on North American stock markets later this hour, so let's look at how yesterday closed with Aaron Sousa.
Canada's main stock index finished yesterday in negative territory. Toronto's S&P TSX gave back 71 points to close at 33,566. In New York, the Dow Jones rose by 356. The Nasdaq climbed by 258. Markets in Japan are closed today for a holiday, but the Hang Seng in Hong Kong inched up 315. The loonie is trading this morning at 73.57 cents U.S. Privacy watchdogs will release a report today on the company behind ChatGPT. The complaint surrounds the collection, use, and disclosure of personal information. The head of the International Energy Agency says the global energy crisis from the war in Iran will hit Canadians soon. Fatih Birol told a fireside chat with Energy Minister Tim Hodgson yesterday that while other countries are already struggling, Canada hasn't been as hard hit. And grocery giant Loblaw will today release its first quarter results. The retailer has been working to build its discount stores and private label products as shoppers hunt for deals. From the Canadian Press Business Desk, I'm Aaron Sousa.
It's all here. News, weather, traffic, and community events. Ryan and Lisa, mornings on CFAX 1070.
Good morning and welcome to Wednesday. It's Ryan with Lisa on the news desk. Good morning, Lisa. How are you doing?
I'm good, Ryan.
Good to see you. We're getting into a day that is going to be beautiful. We're getting into a time of year where things are happening outside more and more. But
Yes.
we're learning we're losing another parade.
Yes.
You were talking about this in the news.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're just joining us, the news is that the Oak Bay Tea Party is now not going to feature a parade as part of its event that's going to get underway next month.
Right.
And then, of course, this follows news that the Buccaneer Days parade, which usually would happen in Esquimalt this coming weekend, they also had to put that off.
Yep.
The Victoria Day parade is still happening, but they've, of course, needed to make changes to where they go, and they've had to really figure things out. And this all comes in the wake of the Lapu Lapu tragedy of last year when somebody did drive into the crowd and that had fatal results. And with that, you've got all of these community organizations, like now the society that does the Oak Bay Tea Party, taking a look at all of the changes to safety and barricades and things they need to do, taking a look at the volunteers they have and realizing they can't pull it off.
It's too much money. Actuarials have a dollar figure in their mind when we go into these things. And volunteers aside, a volunteer isn't going to stop a vehicle from ramming into a crowd. That's the reality. 11 people died at the Lapu Lapu Festival. So we actuarials will look at the numbers of the possibility something like this happen again. Can you put all the parameters, safety parameters in place? And these kind of organizations are run by volunteers for the most part, and you just can't afford the money, the possibility of something like that happening. So to keep everyone safe, and as they are saying too, this is just for 1 year. They'll possibly come back with some kind of modification next year.
It's not a permanent closure,
correct?
But yeah,
it was too much of a scramble to look at the numbers, and I'm sure there was some pretty hefty numbers going around because you do have to have insurance in a case like this for a worst case scenario. And that was a massive tragedy. And it's going to linger for a while, not just in BC, but everywhere, because this is not the only place in North America where we've had someone drive a vehicle into a crowd.
Well, coming up in just a few moments, we actually spoke to the chair of the nonprofit society that puts on the Oak Bay Tea Party with Josh and Jade yesterday. So we're going to listen to what she had to say to us about what was behind this decision. I mean, very much like you just said, Lisa, but we'll kind of hear a bit more of the nuance from the chair coming up in a few moments. But I also want to ask everybody, is this a big blow for you personally? Like when you don't have these little community parades, does it bother you? Do you
attend them?
Do you attend them? Like,
Right.
is this actually going to matter? Or is it going to be sad for you not to have these? Or will this not be as big of a deal? Because I will stress the events themselves that surround this are still going on. So the Oak Bay Tea Party still happens.
Right.
It's just without the parade. The Buccaneer Days in Esquimalt still happening this weekend, just without a parade. Is the parade a big thing that we should be trying to find a way to save?
Or do we modify? Do we put something else in its place?
I would love to hear from you at 71010. Let us know, and we'll explore this a little further in just a moment. But right now, let's get to the news headlines. It's 6:16, and here's Lisa.
Vic PD say they're hoping for help from you with a string of arsons that happened in the city's downtown core. Vic's major crime detectives say they're looking at dash cam footage from the area in the 1200 block of Johnson Street from April 20th, so we're going back a couple weeks. It was between 4:30 and 5:30 in the morning on that day. Police say anyone with information or camera footage should contact them. North Saanich Council sharpening their pencils last month. A 5.5% municipal property tax increase has been greenlighted for this year. The number down from the initially proposed amount of more than 7.5%. The reduction is an effort to balance the need for core services and infrastructure and a continued focus on affordability for people in the area. The financial plan outlines how the district will allocate resources to support essential service. Think roads, parks, fire protection, and all those utilities. The budget builds on extensive public engagement that was done earlier this year. To the waters of the Atlantic now, where 3 patients have been removed from that cruise ship carrying 4 Canadian passengers, 149 on board in total, that was struck in mid-Atlantic amid that deadly hantavirus outbreak. The World Health Organization head Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says that the 3 are being transported to the Netherlands with suspected cases of the virus. He says the UN Health Agency is working with the operators of the cruise ship to closely monitor the health of other passengers and crew. 3 people did die on board the ship. Health authorities in South Africa and Switzerland have identified a strain of the virus that can be transmitted between humans in rare cases, as hantavirus is normally spread through the inhalation of contaminated rodent droppings. And the U.S. president says military operations in the Strait of Hormuz are on hold, so a final agreement can be reached with Iran. The U.S. Navy was escorting ships through the waterway south of Iran in the operation called Project Freedom. Iran called Project Freedom a violation of the current ceasefire. So we'll keep you posted. In the meantime, gas still sits at $2.27 a litre for regular, a new time high for Greater Victoria. That's your news to 6:18.
Thank you, Lisa. We'll take a quick break. Traffic and weather coming up. If you see a problem out there, text us at 71010 or text us to weigh in on parades. Does it bother you that we are losing a few of the smaller community events that are coming up this summer? Considering the circumstances they're all facing, trying to deal with the new safety requirements.
Safety
and
first.
Volunteers. We're going to hear from the Oak Bay Tea Party folks about why they've made the decision to call off the parade portion of the festivities in just a few moments. And I'd love to hear from you, too, about what you think at 71010. That's coming up next. 6:21 on a Wednesday morning, and the commute is looking pretty typical so far. 7, 10, 10 if you see a problem, crash or accident, but very clear for volume delays at the moment. We have paving work again, Cook between Hillside and Bay. That is going to continue on all this week with further lane closures. And for the BC ferries, we have no sailing waits. Still room left on the 7 o'clock from Swartz Bay to Swanson. It's 91% full. The weather today is mainly sunny. We're continuing to see that slight cooling trend. A high of 18. A little cooler where the wind blows onshore because the winds are going to be up off the Juan de Fuca Strait again today. In fact, they're going to be building today, and by this evening, we're going to get gusts up to 80 kilometers an hour off the water, with lows going down to 9 degrees. Tomorrow, another mix of sun and cloud. We will see highs of 17, cooler by the water. Friday, mix of sun and cloud, highs of 16, but then we start to warm up a little bit into the weekend. Saturday and Sunday could get back up to around 20 degrees with mostly sunny skies. Right now around the region, the temperatures we're seeing to start the day. In Oak Bay by the water, it's 10 degrees right now. In Langford, it's 9.
Don't attempt your morning commute without us. Ryan and Lisa, mornings on CFAX 1070.
Let's talk a bit more about this parade issue with the Oak Bay Tea Party nonprofit society that runs the whole thing, announcing that they won't be doing the parade this year. They're joining a few community groups making the same decision. I want to hear from Sandy Germain. She's the chair of that society. She appeared with Josh and Jade on the afternoon show today. If you don't listen to Josh and Jade, 3 to 6 in the afternoon, you should, by the way. This is what she had to say about the decision.
Well, we just felt we didn't have the necessary time to be able to go through and make sure that we had everything in place that's required from the recommendations that came down in the report from Justice Hinkson. So it was a hard decision, but we chose to err on the side of caution and make sure that next year we know exactly what the procedures, protocol requirements are so that we can move ahead and have a safe and lengthy, hopefully next year, very lengthy parade.
Couple things to unpack there. The report she's mentioning from the justice is the one following the Lapu-Lapu tragedy from last year, which made a bunch of recommendations like better barricades for vehicle entrance to these places, because what happened in Lapu-Lapu, somebody drove into the crowd. So a lot of parades are struggling with how do you actually bring in big enough barricades to do that. But then, as she mentioned, another thing to really focus on there, she mentions this is not a permanent decision. This was just this year. They couldn't quite pull it together. They're hoping to come back next year. And the other thing she talked about is volunteers. That was also a big part of this.
It was actually quite a large factor. We had the same volunteer group for several years. And as with most, volunteer organizations, people start to get older, move on. They may change, their focus. And so this year we found that we were looking at shortages of volunteers, and before doing a shout out for them, we needed to make sure that we were going to be able to meet the other requirements for the safety factors. Mainly to do with barricades, fencing. We may need additional police officers, that type of thing. And so we sat back. We didn't do a shout out for volunteers. Our priority was making sure that if the parade was going ahead, we were going to be able to be compliant.
So they had a shortage of volunteers, but they also didn't push for volunteers because they didn't think they could get the other safety requirements done, or at least they were unsure. So it all kind of snowballed, and that's how we got to this point where, again, Oak Bay Tea Party, which takes place in about a month, they will not have the parade portion. They will have the rest of it, just not the parade for this year, hoping to get it back next year. I think that's the bottom line there.
And I think, unfortunately, at least for this year, there'll be more parades succumbing to this, because when you look at the cost of having to upgrade barricades, whatever that's going to be. Really, if you park a vehicle there, that's a barricade. But I don't know the legalities of that. If someone could just park their vehicle in the street, and call that a barricade, I know police can do that.
On that, actually interesting because the TC 10K race was just a couple weekends ago, and I was in it. And the thing I noticed, and I think we did talk a bit to the organizers, one of their solutions was to get one of the sponsors who was a car dealership, in this case Kia, to park some of the Kias as barricades, but these were like show cars that were for sale.
That's a good idea.
So Kia was getting a chance at this huge event to park their vehicles on show, display signs like you could buy this Kia for, this much money or whatever.
Works.
So they got some advertising and the race got barricades. So I feel like there's some creative solutions being sought here, but it takes, I guess, some time and you got to get people involved in this and make all those deals. And it's just taking all of these nonprofit societies that run all of these events a little bit off guard, I think, this year. And it's just been too hard to scramble it together.
And most of these people are volunteers, and they don't do this kind of thing for a living. Not to say they're not good at it, but they're having to reinvent the wheel a little bit here. So in the case of attrition where, your volunteer corps is just falling off a little bit, so you have to get that back online, because the Lapu Lapu happened a year ago. So in looking at that through the winter, it's like, what are we going to do? How is the parade attended? Do we have really good attendance for the parade? Do people want the parade to continue? It's not that the parade's not a success, but sometimes these things happen, and then we get a chance to reset. And in resetting, like you say, whether it's just having a sponsor park vehicles there as a barricade or something bigger than that, it works. Change can be very beneficial, and maybe that's what's in the works right now. Obviously, it is.
Yeah. So far, no Oak Bay Tea Party Parade. The Buccaneer Days of Esquimalt parade that would have happened this coming weekend is also off. We'll see what happens with the other smaller community parades that are scheduled to take place all throughout the summer.
Right.
So here's our question. At 7-10-10, how big of a deal are these parades for you? Are you really sad to see these things go? Are these a thing that you enjoy? Do you go to them? I would love to hear your take either way at 7-10-10. But right now, we'll take a quick break for the news. We've got the top stories of the day with Lisa next.
Developing political story, a big doozy.
Vashi Capellos.
What started as a dull day is anything but.
The top newsmakers.
Your go-to political debrief. Daily.
What is really going on?
The breaking news.
Just moments ago.
And the entertaining analysis and debate to follow.
I don't think you can sugarcoat it. It's an issue.
It's not true, guys. Yeah.
Vashi Capellos.
There is a greater plan here.
Vashi Capellos. Weekdays 9 a.m. to 11.
Bigger picture politically, which is
on CFAX 1070. CFAX Victoria.
An iHeart radio station. If it's happening,
It's here.
CFAX 1070.
Good morning, 6:30 on this Wednesday, May 6th. We've got 9 degrees right now for Greater Victoria. We will eventually get into some sunshine and a high of 18. We'll get you the full forecast in a moment, but right now the news begins. And we say good morning to Lisa Best.
Good morning. We're learning more about the tragic case of an Nanaimo man that was brought to the forefront on the radar at the BC legislature yesterday. The Conservatives are now calling for changes to the Mental Health Act. Skeena MLA Claire Rattay told the story in question period yesterday.
Jesse Flowerdew's wife, Daisy, told me that he was a staunch advocate for men's mental health. He had a documented history of prior suicide attempts, so when he was struggling again, he self-admitted to the hospital and made it clear that he was struggling with suicidal ideation again. He was released from hospital shortly thereafter, and within an hour of his release, he was gone. His family was never notified, not when he was admitted, not when he was discharged.
Health Minister Josie Osborne recommitted to review the Mental Health Act to update and modernize it with families in mind. Rattay pointed out one phone call is all it takes. She's going to be a guest on CFAX at 8:20 to unpack more about this and the changes that she'd like to see. Add Saanich to the list of municipalities that are looking for ways to bring more doctors to town. Saanich Council voting 7-2 to encourage that doctors' offices and medical clinics be included in future developments. Staff have been directed to examine how planning and development tools could be used to increase the supply of clinic space in the district. The motion also wants staff to look at adding medical clinics and doctors' offices to the eligibility list for density bonuses. That new study can shake our world. That massive tsunami in Alaska last year, apparently a warning sign for more potential disasters, something most of us know, but do you have that emergency kit packed? A lot of people don't. The study looked at the August tsunami, which caused millions of tons of rockfall to crash into a fjord. It found that there could be future disasters, yes, as continued warming causes glacial recession. University of Calgary Earth and Environmental Science professor and study researcher Dan Sugar says a big wave is an example of what can happen in other locations with more disastrous consequences, especially if there's people in the way.
So, like on the West Coast, we do have Prince Rupert and Port Alberni. Like, we do have towns at the heads of some of these fjords. There's also a pretty big ecological impact. There's a lot of trees that got completely obliterated and habitat and probably animals, et cetera, that got obliterated by this tsunami.
There were no reported injuries or death because of last year's tsunami, but Sugar says there should be better monitoring done moving forward. Senate Republicans have included $1 billion in the new U.S. budget to pay for security for the new White House ballroom. And President Donald Trump had said the project will be fully funded by donors. ABC's Jay O'Brien reports from Capitol Hill.
This money is tucked into a broader $70 billion bill to fund ICE and Customs and Border Protection, two agencies that were left out of that bipartisan deal to recently reopen the rest of the Department of Homeland Security. The money can be used, the bill says, just for security, not general construction, but it's unclear exactly what that would entail at this hour. It's still got to pass both the House and the Senate, but because it's in a budget bill, Republicans can pass it with just a party line vote. They wouldn't need Democrats.
Back here in Canada, we're learning more about Honda suspending its plans to build that massive electric vehicle plant in Alliston, Ontario. CTV's Zerdaya Alman has the latest.
The $15 billion project was announced in 2024, but last year, Honda paused it and said the timing would be reevaluated. According to Nikkei Asia, sluggish U.S. demand is pushing the Japanese automaker to put hybrids at the center of its North American strategy. Federal Industry Minister Melanie Joly's office tells CTV News that American tariffs and changes to U.S. domestic policies are creating real pressures for automakers.
The Honda EV plant was originally slated to open in 2028. And more from the Mid-Atlantic, the ordeal of finally ending for 150 passengers and crew aboard that cruise ship where a deadly virus is thought to have sickened a number of people and killing 3.
Nearly 150 people were aboard the Dutch ship MV Hondius when a 70-year-old man died of hantavirus. His wife later died of the same illness. The death of a German man has not been verified as hantavirus. The ship has been denied docking, but now passengers are being evacuated in small boats, taken by ambulance to the airport in Cape Verde off the coast of Africa and flown to the Netherlands. Jim Ryan, ABC News.
That's your CFAX News to 6:35. Your CFAX 1070 news poll question this morning. Are you prepared for a weather-related emergency or worst-case scenario for that matter? 51% saying no. You can vote at cfax1070.com or the iHeartRadio app. I'm Lisa Bester, News Time, 6:37.
Thanks, Lisa. Let's take a quick look at what you can expect out of the weather today. So it's sunny, it's windy, still warm, but just not quite as warm. That's the short story. Highs of 18, cooler by the Wandafuka Strait.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet. That's what you need to know for today. We'll get you the full forecast in just a moment. But first, to the sports. Hey, in Canucks land, Jim Rutherford is stepping down as the president of hockey operations. The three-time Stanley Cup winner was hired in December of 2021 and plans to transition into an advisor role after the NHL draft that takes place this month.
I'll help with the transition and with the new person and new people in different positions and things like that. And but I'll still be part of the organization, and when somebody wants to bounce something off me, I'm happy to do it.
Rutherford previously served as GM for the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Carolina Hurricanes. Rutherford admitted in January of 2023 that turning the Canucks around was a bigger job than he expected. And, well, we still haven't gotten there. Speaking of the NHL, yesterday, the draft taking place. Toronto Maple Leafs, the big winners out of that. They were able to overcome their odds and get the right balls to get number one at next month's draft in Buffalo. It's the third time in Leafs history they'll pick first. They took Austin Matthews in 2016 and Wendell Clark in 1985 were the other couple of times. Vancouver Canucks, how did they do? Well, they got third pick out of all of that, followed by the Calgary Flames at number 6 and the Winnipeg Jets at number 8 for the Canadian teams. Local hockey, WHL Prospects Draft is happening this evening. The Victoria Royals have number 7 and 5 selections. The Kelowna Rockets select first overall for the WHL Draft. And in the BCHL playoffs that continue, Nanaimo took a 3-0 lead in the Coastal Conference Final over Prince George. They had a 4-0 win last night in Nanaimo, and the next game is tonight in Nanaimo. And hey, if they win this one, Nanaimo, they could clinch the series at home with a sweep. Colorado Avalanche beat the visiting Minnesota Wild in the NHL last night 5-2 to take a 2-0 lead in the second round best-of-7 playoff series between those two teams. Game 3 is on Saturday. And for your Toronto Blue Jays baseball, they're looking to snap a 3-game losing skid when they face the Tampa Bay Rays in the third and final game of that series in Florida today. We'll see Patrick Corbin on the mound for the 16-20 Jays, who lost 4-3 last night despite taking a lead into the 8th inning. They weren't able to hold on and fell in the end. That is your sports to 6:39. CFAX traffic and weather at 6:41 on a Wednesday. What's it looking like out there? Well, we're starting to see the volume delays build up for the West Shore commute into Victoria. Nothing out of the ordinary as far as I can see. Text me at 71010 if you see any problems, crashes, or accidents out there. Paving work will start up again in about 20 minutes for Cook Street between Hillside and Bay. It's been the same for the last couple of weeks, although they've got further closures now on that stretch. And for the BC Ferries, the 7 o'clock sailing is now full. It's a one sail wait. The 8 o'clock is your next available vessel from Swartz Bay to Sawasan with any vehicle deck space left. For the weather, well, it's It continues to be a nice sunny, dry patch. We've got a few extra clouds today, a little extra wind off the water, and it's a little cooler than it has been. 18 degrees is the high, cooler by the windy Juan de Fuca Strait. Those winds really pick up tonight. Gusts up to 80 kilometers an hour if you're right along the Juan de Fuca Strait is what you can expect tonight with clear skies otherwise and a low to 9. For tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud, highs 17, a little cooler by the water. Friday, mix of sun and cloud, highs of 16. But then we sort of start to climb back up temperature-wise into the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Sunny with temperatures around about 20 degrees. So still very pleasant and summery, just not quite the heat wave sort of condition we saw last weekend. Right now for the temperatures as we take a look around the region at the University of Victoria, kind of in the Saanich Bay border area. It's 10 degrees right now. In Colwood by the water, it's also 10 degrees. Well, we await the first results out of North American stock markets with the opening bells just sort of ringing out as we speak. Let's take a look at how yesterday closed. The S&P TSX gave back 71 points, closing down to 33,566. The Dow in New York was up 356 to 49,298. The NASDAQ also managed to gain 258 to 25,326. And the Canadian dollar at 73.5 cents U.S. Barrel of oil, big drop yesterday, down $5.87.
Okay. You have to let us get ready for it.
The barrel fell. It's now below $100 a barrel to $96.
Okay. How's that affect 227 at the
Well,
pumps?
it's not directly linked, but, it's sort of all part of the soup of information that eventually leads to a gas price somewhere. But I think there's a bit of chatter again about maybe there could be some sort of peace deal worked out between Iran and
we've heard that
the
story
United States.
before.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, you get this hint that, maybe they've got it figured out, and then the oil price drops, but then you never know where that's going to go next. So
right now it's sitting at 227, so that's where it's gone for us.
So I don't just have a grain of salt for you. I've got like a wheelbarrow of salt to,
Rub it in
take
the
that
wound?
information with. Take it with a wheelbarrow of salt.
Okay.
Or whatever that's saying. I've taken that saying too far, so we're just going to...
No, I know you did well with it, I thought.
Okay, thank you.
Packed it up nicely.
Thanks for starting your day with us. Ryan and Lisa, mornings on CFAX 1070.
Texter at 71010 says, Good morning, Ryan and Lisa. Yes, it was the start of summer coming in Victoria when you had a parade every other week or so with rides and midways, communities enjoying festivals right up to Labor Day. That's a texter talking about the fact that we are getting into that festival season. The Buccaneer Days in Esquimalt is this weekend. I mean, Oak Bay Tea Party's coming up. Sydney's got the Sydney Days. Nice. I mean, they're everywhere. Like most communities have one of these things. But as we've been learning in the news, the Oak Bay Tea Party has announced their parade is not going to happen this year for various reasons. But, new safety rules coming out of the Lapu Lapu Festival from last year are one of the big triggers. And then for Esquimalt... Esquimalt Buccaneers Days won't have a parade either. The Oak Bay Tea Party won't have a parade. And we're just asking you how you feel about these parades. Are these a big deal? Are you going to miss them? And there's a texter who thinks it's all part of summer here. This texter at 71010 says, parades are fun to watch and be in. Thank you, texter. And this texter says, the Victoria Day Parade is good enough for the year. Oh, and that's an interesting point, because if you've got the big one downtown, is that enough to kind of scratch your parade itch? Do you need all these little community ones as well?
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Will, one big one at Christmas and one big one spring or summer do for you? I don't know. I think it depends on what, we have parades that have gone for decades in this area.
Yeah.
And to lose them, it's like, I don't like that idea, but how much do I attend parades? Sometimes. Usually I kind of avoid them for the gridlock, personally.
Yeah, you think I'm going to stay away from that area because it's going to be
But if I had
busy.
children,
yes.
I would definitely want to take them to see, because I know the excitement for a child, and for a lot of us too. If I do make it out, it is exciting to watch it. And I think it gives the community a chance to show themselves off.
Yeah.
It gives the community to say, okay, we're all in this together. We're coming together because we'll have, first responders in there. You look at the small town community parades, right? Everybody gets involved. Even the kids on their bicycles decorate them up. So, and our motorcycles would do the same thing. So I do like that idea of it, that the community gets to show off a little bit and to come together on a celebratory route. But the safety aspect of that, based on the fact that we've now had a major incident in Canada. I mean, you think back too, we had one, Alex Manassin in Toronto, where he drove down the sidewalk. That just wasn't a parade. We had a similar event happen over a decade ago. So these things are happening not just stateside, but in Canada now, and we have to protect people. So how do we do that? Right? How do we keep people safe? How do we keep people safe at markets? Right? Anywhere where there's a crowd gathering.
Texter at 71010 says, this time, no with the parades, especially not on a Sunday. The streets are already narrow. Roads have construction all over the place.
True.
So there's a texter who's just done with all of the obstructions.
It's difficult getting around town. I feel like I'm in LA.
And this texter at 71010 says, having lived in New Orleans for quite a few years and attending quite a few Mardi Gras parades, it's hard for me to take the parades here seriously. No offense, Victoria.
It's different.
We do it a little
going
differently.
To Carnival, going to Mardi Gras, it's also a different vibe. There's a lot less beads involved.
Yeah, it's a different energy. Yeah,
maybe
that's
less
for sure.
Skin too. But I understand what you're saying. I mean, that's a little bit more adult oriented. Most of them, anyways.
A little different.
Yeah. This is a community celebrating. That's what these are. This is us coming together and celebrating and showing off. The one I would never want to lose is the lighted truck parade.
Oh, that one's good. Well, at least that one. You don't necessarily need barriers because that thing's just moving.
They are barriers.
It's never, they're barrier enough.
Right? But that one, I set that in my schedule and I am there because I think it's stunning and I think it's so unique and it's a massive fundraiser too, which is really nice to see.
How big of a deal are these small community parades to you? Are you sad that a couple of them won't be happening this year? We'll get your text at 71010, but right now it's time for the headlines. At 6:48, here is Lisa Best.
The BC Conservation Service is concerned about reports of illegal fishing north of Nanaimo. It's Robotham Lake they're looking at. They're advising that the public, the patrols, are telling people that patrols will be increased to deal with the situation. Robotham Lake has water body-specific regulations that require the release of all trout, single barbless hook, and artificial fly only. If you're a fisherman, you know what I'm talking about. The use of bait is prohibited in addition to the general provincial regulations. Still in the woods, May is Lyme Disease Awareness Month. One health official offering prevention tips. Dr. Christopher Bozzoli of the Cleveland Clinic said the disease is transmitted through black-legged ticks. They're not very big. And he says it's best to cover up as much skin as possible when outdoors. Long sleeves, pants, light-colored are better. He says EPA-registered repellent spray with 20% DEET will also try to keep them off your body. You apply that twice a day. Lyme disease symptoms can develop within a few days and up to several weeks after being bitten. It includes fever, headache, chills, body aches, and that telltale bullseye rash that comes around the bite spot. If you get the symptoms, you have to get yourself to a doctor to get some work done and some pills taken. Otherwise, this could be long-term. Spirit Airlines is starting its bankruptcy process after attending court in New York yesterday. About 17,000 Spirit employees are expected to be laid off during the process, which could take months. Spirit suddenly canceling flights, leaving a lot of customers in the lurch over the weekend, ceasing operations after more than 30 years in business. And as we look at the price of jet fuel, we can worry about other airlines as well, possibly having rough waters and turbulence ahead. That's your news to 6:50.
Thank you, Lisa. Apparently, Victoria is about to become the home and the center of choral singing for at least a few days in May. The National Choral Conference and Festival, called Podium, is going to be taking place May 14th to the 17th. What's this all about? And how could we take part? Because I guess there's going to be a lot of performances, including some free ones as a part of this. So we're going to get into that right after traffic and weather.
From CFAX 1070.
Here's what's happening around the island. The Esquimalt Buccaneer Days takes over Archie Browning Sports Centre and Bullen Field, May 7th through 10th. Full schedule on EsquimalBuccaneerDays.ca. Sign up for the Walk for Alzheimer's Sunday, May 31st at Fisherman's Wharf. More info at walkforalzheimers.ca.
Get more event info at CFAX1070.com.
If it's happening, it's here.
CFAX 1070.
CFAX Morning Show brought to you by Thrifty Foods. At Thrifty Foods, Happy is celebrating Mom. This Saturday from 10 until 1, the first 200 kids aged 12 and under are invited to decorate a free cake for Mom at all locations. On the roads, we're seeing the volume delays building from the West Shore, but they're looking fairly normal right now, and there are no crashes or accidents to report. You can text me at 71010 if you see something. For BC Ferries, the 7 o'clock sailing is full, so we got a one-sail wait, but it's leaving in like 6 minutes. So you don't have long to wait for the 8 o'clock sailing, which has lots of room for vehicles on the decks. And for the weather, it's going to be sunny, a little cooler than it's been the last few days with a high of 18, but feeling cooler by the water where the wind's going to be blowing off the Juan de Fuca Strait, and those winds will pick up tonight with quite a gusty evening ahead of us.
In the kitchen, in the car, and at the office. Ryan and Lisa, mornings on CFAX 1070. Take us with you. Listen live on the free iHeartRadio app.
It's going to be a whole lot of singing happening around Victoria coming up mid-May with a national choral event coming to our city. Podium 2026 set to host 8 major concerts, a bunch of free pop-up performances that'll be taking place throughout the city. To find out more about this, I've got the co-chair for Podium this year on the line with me, Adam Kahn. Hello, sir. How you doing?
Hello, Ryan. It's great to talk to you.
Great to chat with you. So, Podium 2026. This sounds like quite the big thing that's happening, and then for us, the regular folks, we're going to get to catch a lot of singing out of it. Tell me what this is all about.
It's been quite a few decades since we've had this national conference here. Podium 2026 is Canada's national choral conference and festival. It brings all choirs from all over Canada, conductors and singers and administrators of choral groups. And it'll be taking place from May 14th to the 17th, which is next weekend. I know it's a busy weekend. And the locations will be at the University of Victoria, both in the Farquhar Auditorium and the Philip T. Young, as well as downtown at Christchurch Cathedral and at St. Andrew's Presbyterian and Royal BC Museum. We're looking at probably over 400 delegates, and then at least 2,000, probably more like 3,000 total of all singers coming, gathering here. So they'll be everywhere. You'll hear singing wherever you go.
So when I think of this, I'm thinking of choirs. Is it that simple, or is there more to this than that?
Well, in Victoria, we like to think of ourselves as having probably one of the biggest population of choirs in Canada, but I think every city kind of touts that same figure. But it's a rare opportunity where we're having all these choirs that are coming from Canada to come to Victoria, because obviously it's not a major hub. And so the fact that we have the celebration of choirs, everything from, for instance, one of our own famous YYJ choir, under Mark Jenkins, they do indie pop and kind of popular music, to classical, children's choirs, youth groups, to professional choirs. Like on Friday, the daytime concerts, we have the Braille Tone Choir, which is a choir that's filled with visually impaired singers, paired with visual singers, and they come together. It's really heartwarming, and that's paired with UBC university singers. So a whole wide group of people coming. There's a couple of concerts that I really think people might want to go to. The National Youth Choir of Canada, which is made of 4 singers from each province coming together to form one choir. That's on the Friday, May 15th at Christchurch. You don't want to miss that because they're going to be stunning. And also there's concerts. Well, there's concerts every night. On Saturday night, there's a really great concert of children's choirs, 2 professional choirs, the Vancouver Chamber Choir, Chronos Vocal Ensemble from Edmonton. And then on the Sunday, the closing concert, it includes Luminous Voices from Calgary, the Vancouver Youth Choir, which is really exciting because they were just at the big International Cork Festival in Ireland and won first prize with the highest mark in 71 years.
Oh, wow.
You don't want to miss this choir. So it's really thrilling.
So this really is like world-class stuff coming to Victoria for this.
World-class choirs and a lifetime opportunity to hear these great singing, and singing is so important in our lives. It really brings us together and makes us feel really great.
And it's kind of interesting to hear from just looking at this and how big of a deal this is. It's neat to hear that choirs and that kind of singing and that kind of music and that kind of participation is still so high and so, I guess, healthy.
Well, exactly. And I think especially coming out of COVID, it was a time when choirs were sorely missed because, of course, during that time we couldn't gather together. And now it's coming back very stronger than ever because a sense of belonging, sense of community, and building relationships is where it happens in choirs.
Okay, so it's May 14th to the 17th. Singers, conductors, ensembles from across the country gathering in Victoria for this thing called Podium. It's a big conference of all of these singers and choirs and choral participants, and there will be a bunch of performances that you can take part in by going and checking them out. If people want to find out more or get tickets or all of that stuff, how do they do that?
They go to www.podium, Podium, 2026.ca. So podium2026.ca. And I just wanted to mention there are 35 free concerts happening throughout the city for those during the days from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at St. Andrews and at the Royal BC Museum. So if they're not able to come to the other concerts that I had mentioned, there will be other choirs performing, 35 of them, all throughout the city. It'll be really exciting.
Jonathan Cotty is co-chair of Podium 2026. This is great. Thanks for telling me about it.
Hey, great to chat with you, Ryan. Take care.
7 o'clock news next on CFAX.
CFAX Victoria.
An iHeart radio station. If it's happening,
It's here.
CFAX 1070.
Good morning. It's 7:01 on this Wednesday, May the 6th. It's still a sunny day. It's a little cooler than it was yesterday and a little windier. But otherwise, our stable, dry weather continues. And I'll get you the full details in a moment. Right now, though, here is Lisa Best with the 7 o'clock news.
Thank you. Good morning. Across the country, we're going to hear that shrill, shrieking siren of the public alert system again today. It's just a test for the real thing.
A test message and a tone from Alert Ready will be broadcast on television, radio, and compatible wireless devices. Test messages will be issued in nearly every province and territory except for Quebec and Saskatchewan at specific times between morning and early afternoon, with Ontario's test set for Thursday. The system is typically tested in May and November and is part of Canada's efforts to ensure it works and raise awareness. There is no option to opt out of the test or actual emergency alerts. Rob Westgate, The Canadian Press.
At least one researcher says the study of a massive tsunami in Alaska is a warning that we need to do better at monitoring. The 2025 tsunami was the second largest in recorded history, but there were no reported casualties because of where it occurred. University of Calgary Earth and Environmental Science professor and study researcher Dan Sugar says it is a threat that people need to be thinking about as more and more ships could be dotting the BC coastline.
It doesn't mean that we should, ban all cruise ships and all tankers from like any part of the coast. It just means that we really need to, we policymakers and scientists need to think about these threats seriously and really study the slopes.
The study says the landslide that led to the tsunami was a result of glacial recession. The CEO of a supported housing operator here in Victoria says a homicide last year that spurred recent legislative reform may have been preventable had the new rules been in place at the time. Pacifica Housing's Caroline Ibarra says that recent changes to the Residential Tenancy Act for supported housing tenants allows operators to deal more effectively with violence, weapons, and trespassers in buildings. She says the Victoria unit where the death occurred last April had been problematic prior to the death.
It took a good 6 months before we were able to ensure that people known to be violent were kept away from that site. We don't know anything further, but we certainly knew that there were people who had weapons on site and who were violent. And they weren't necessarily tenants, but they were associated with the unit.
Police say the investigation into the homicide of 34-year-old Keith Scott, who was not a tenant at the building at the time, remains ongoing, and his family members say they have not been told yet how exactly he died. Privacy watchdogs plan to release a report today on OpenAI, the U.S.-based tech company behind the popular artificial intelligence-powered chatbot ChatGPT.
Federal Privacy Commissioner Philippe Dufresne said just over 3 years ago that his office was investigating a complaint alleging the collection, use, and disclosure of personal information without consent. The findings will be delivered by Dufresne and his counterparts from British Columbia, Alberta, and Quebec, who collaborated on a joint probe. They plan to discuss their conclusions at a news conference in Ottawa. Diana Mussina, The Canadian Press.
And stateside, Donald Trump is saying that Project Freedom, the operation to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz, will be paused if an agreement can be reached with Iran. Here's Secretary of State Mark Rubio on the broader war yesterday.
The operation is over. Epic Fury, as the president notified Congress, we're done with that stage of it.
Focus for Rubio now shifts to the upcoming meeting with Pope Leo at the Vatican this week. He dismissed it as having anything to do with Trump's secret spat with him, or maybe not so secret.
No, I mean, it's a trip we had planned from before, and obviously we had some stuff that happened. And no, look, there's a lot to talk about with the Vatican. I'll give you one example. The Pope just returned from a trip to Africa.
That meeting between Rubio and Pope Leo is set to take place tomorrow. And that is your news to 7:05. Your CFAX 1070 news poll question this morning. We're asking, are you prepared for a weather-related emergency? 51% saying no. You can vote at CFAX1070.com, Twitter X, or the iHeartRadio app. And Lisa, best your news time is 7:06.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning. Welcome to Wednesday. It's sunny again, a few clouds here and there, and some wind off the Juan de Fuca Strait, which really builds into the evening. It's going to get quite gusty by evening, but otherwise, all that aside, it's mostly sunny with temperatures up to 18 degrees. That's what you can expect. 9 is the temperature right now. Maybe a little warmer in some places. For our sports, let's do that now. Jim Rutherford is out. He's stepping down as the Vancouver Canucks president of hockey operations. The 77-year-old three-time Stanley Cup winner was hired back in December of 2021. He plans to transition into an advisor role after the NHL draft next month.
We're going to put together a really good staff here going forward. And this is something I've thought about anyways for a couple of years, but it's time for me to do that. I feel bad that I have to do it at such a young age, but I've decided to do it anyways.
The news comes after the Canucks finished the season last in the standings with a 25-49-8 record. Last night, they learned they're going to get the third overall pick in the draft. That last place finish couldn't get number one. Who got number one? It was the Toronto Maple Leafs, who kind of beat the odds a bit with the ball draw and managed to get the number one pick at next month's draft, taking place in Buffalo. For the NHL last night, the Colorado Avalanche beat the visiting Minnesota Wild 5-2 to take a 2-0 lead in the second-round best-of-7 NHL playoff series. Game 3 will be Saturday, and the BCHL playoffs continue. The Coastal Conference Final between Nanaimo and Prince George will go into Game 4 tonight in Nanaimo with the Clippers poised to sweep the whole thing. Nanaimo had a win yesterday 4-0, blanking Prince George to go up in the series 3-0. And the WHL prospects draft is happening this evening. Victoria Royals with number 7 and number 5 selections. The Kelowna Rockets will pick first overall. The Toronto Blue Jays will be back in action facing the Tampa Bay Rays for the third and final game of this 3-game set in Florida. The Jays lost last night, 4-3 the score for Tampa Bay. And we will see if they can turn things around today with lefty Patrick Corbin on the mound for the 16-20 Jays. It's lefty Shane McClanahan who will pitch for the Rays on the other side of things. That is your Sports 2709. CFAX traffic and weather at 7:10. Watch out for those closures on Cook Street between Hillside and Bay, now in effect as the paving work gets underway for the day, and that'll be the case up until 7 p.m. tonight. For the rest of the commutes, we're seeing the West Shore delays building up, but it's just volume right now, no crashes or accidents. If you see any updates there, let me know at 7:10:10. How are things going from the West Shore into the core area of Victoria and beyond? For BC Ferries, no sailing waits right now. The 7 did fill up. The 8 is now next with vehicle deck space left on that one. No sailing waits. And the weather forecast. Let's get you a few details here. So mainly sunny today. Highs of 18. Cooler by the water where it will be blowing off the Juan de Fuca Strait. In fact, by this evening, gusts up to 80 kilometers an hour. So a windy night ahead of us if you're by the water. Lows down to 9. Tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud with a high of 17, cooler by the water, so kind of similar to today. A little blustery, a little cooler compared to what we've been having. Friday, mix of sun and cloud, highs of 16. which is actually getting to be a bit more typical. That's more in line with the average temperatures in an average day for May in Victoria. But then it turns around and gets warmer again on the weekend. Saturday and Sunday looking sunny with temperatures around about 20 degrees. And right now it's 11 at the airport. CFAX at 70 Business News now. We're getting our first look at the numbers for today. The S&P TSX in Toronto up 361 to 33,928. The Dow in New York up 460 to 49,758. NASDAQ up 275 to 25,601. Canadian dollar at 73.4 cents US, which is down just a fraction of a cent from yesterday's close. And the barrel of oil down $6.16 US a barrel to $96.11, which is down below the 100 mark.
Ryan and Lisa. Mornings on CFAX 1070. Remember, you have us in the palm of your hand. For listeners on the go, listen live on the free iHeartRadio app.
Well, it's 7:12 here on this Wednesday morning, and we're in the midst of Emergency Preparedness Week, Lisa.
Yes, we are.
The thing that I thought was interesting that I saw out of this is, among other things, tsunamis are being talked about.
Yes.
And Victoria, the city, put out this map of the city itself, not the rest of the region, but just for Victoria, of what are the actual tsunami hazard zones and what's not at risk. And I think it's interesting because I think a lot of people assume we're right by the water.
Right.
The tsunami risk is basically everywhere. I think people would think. You'd think that, but it's actually, if you look at this map, there are areas that are at risk, but it really ends quite quickly. Like you don't get very far away from the coastline and before you're just fine. Like the Ogden Point area.
Okay.
That makes sense, because there's water and there's a big flat parking lot. So that's
it depends
that's a
on
risk.
the height, though. Yes, and what's protecting it coming in? Is there something protecting it from the wave coming in the first place?
Yeah. So
like mountains.
Yeah, and just like our coastline for the most part goes up really sharply. Like think of the Dallas Road Bluffs. You've actually got quite a bit of protection there. But the areas that seem to be at risk, according to this map, the whole Ogden Point area, a little bit around the gorge, but only like a block in or so from the water around the gorge. But that makes sense because waves would kind of funnel in there. So that seems to be an area that's maybe a little bit at risk. And then right kind of around the Ross Bay Cemetery where you go have a bit of a lowland right there.
It is low.
And Clover Point. That's another spot.
That's not okay.
But otherwise, and I encourage everybody to take a look at the map. Like most of the city of Victoria, like you get like a block away from the water and you're fine, which is good to know.
What size of wave are they talking about?
It just says tsunami hazard zone and outside the tsunami hazard zone.
Oh.
Simple as that. That's what they've got down there.
Okay. I'd like to know size of wave. Just curious.
Well, if you'd like to know more, it is Emergency Preparedness Week, and all this kind of information is out there.
What's interesting, too, is our poll question.
Yeah,
and
tell
the
me about that.
answers of it, simply because we ask every year, at least once a year when this comes around, are you prepared? Do you have, what did they say, 72 hours? 3 days worth of water and food and medications and everything that if you had to leave or if you had to stay and hunker down, are you prepared? And right now, 67% are saying no on our Twitter X page, and just over 50% are saying no on our website. So we're not prepared.
And this one is for a weather-related emergency specifically.
Well, let's go with wildfires. Let's go with flood. I don't know, tsunami, is that weather-related? Weather-related is sort of the low-hanging fruit for us. It would be something that happens. I mean, you think flooding, you think fires. Those two things could affect us. If we had an earthquake, well, that's something that's immediate for you. You don't need a warning to, your phone to go off to tell you there's an earthquake happening. So, that's 2/3 saying, nope, not ready. And I'm in there.
Yeah, I'd have to say no.
I don't have it together.
I feel like I've given it a shot every once in a while. Like I got a bunch of water, sort of like emergency water in a part of my yard where it would be accessible if something happens. Although I realize it's been there for a while and it's probably very old.
Yeah.
And so like preparations I've done in the past are probably getting to the point where I need to kind of refresh it. And that's the thing that I guess is another thing to think about is you gotta keep up on it. You can't just do it once and then forget about it for
Was
years.
it once a year that you dust it off?
Yeah, check it out,
over,
make sure it's all good.
Throw the food out.
I think it's good. This texter at 71010 says pet food and meds are a thing that they like to make sure they've got ready to go.
Agreed.
We learned that yesterday. We're talking to the BCSBCA about making sure you've also got not just your go bag, but your pet's go bag.
Right.
Do you get some pet food and some pet stuff to get you through if you're grabbing your dog or cat to get out from the emergency, whatever that happens to be?
We saw that at Hurricane Katrina, and we're going back, right? But Hurricane Katrina, they were rescuing animals off the freeway with the flooding in different U.S. states. Animal rescue was a big part of it when it comes down to an emergency happening, and Canada as well. But we have seen animals in peril. We saw during the atmospheric rivers system that went through, rescuing farm animals, and we did lose quite a few in the BC interior. So, animals, obviously, our pets are part of your family, and you've got to prepare for them as well. So that was good advice.
Speaking of animals, change of topic coming up. We're going to talk about marmots. The Vancouver Island Marmot Breeding Program is a thing we follow as we try to reestablish this endangered population. And right now, it's the time of the year where they all start to wake up and the breeding programs really kick into gear. We're going to find out more about that with the Marmot Recovery Foundation joining us in a moment right after the headlines. Lisa, what's going on in the world?
Canada's Alert Ready system is going to be tested today. Your phone's going to buzz. Something in your life is going to buzz around 2 o'clock. Hopefully it's electronic. Only Quebec and Saskatchewan residents don't receive the text message and tone from Alert Ready that will be broadcast TV, radio, and compatible wire devices, so definitely your iPhone. The system tests typically happen twice a year, May and November, as we build our awareness and preparation. As of April 30th, that system has already issued 28 alerts across Canada from emergencies like Amber Alerts, tornadoes, and wildfires. Results of a joint probe into AI expected to be released today in Ottawa. Federal and Privacy Commissioner Philip Dufresne will release the results of an investigation he announced more than 3 years ago, along with his counterparts from here in BC, Alberta, and Quebec. The probe was launched after a complaint alleging the collection, use, and disclosure of personal information was done without consent. And in health news, interesting new research showing that common knee surgery may be ineffective and actually make things worse. This is researchers at the University of Helsinki in Finland. They did a 10-year clinical trial looking at the most common repair surgery that was for damaged meniscus. They found it did not improve knee function when compared with a placebo procedure. Patients also reported more knee-related issues a decade later and a greater likelihood of needing more surgery. That's your headline news to 7:19.
CFAX traffic and weather, no crashes or accidents for Greater Victoria right now. Text me at 71010 if you see otherwise. Volume delays have built up on the West Shore commute. They're looking pretty typical for a Wednesday, but nothing like a collision or anything like that causing trouble. It's just volume right now. For the BC ferries, no sailing waits. And for the weather, it's going to be another mix of sun and cloud today, maybe more on the sunny side with some wind off the water, making it feel a bit cooler. Highs of 18, cooler by the water, and the winds off the Juan de Fuca Strait will really build by tonight. Gusts up to 80 kilometers an hour this evening, so a windy one if you're sort of exposed to the Juan de Fuca Strait. Clear skies tonight, lows to 9. Tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud, highs of 17, and again, cooler by the windy Juan de Fuca Strait.
Ryan and Lisa, mornings on CFAX 1070. Oversleepers, catch all the highlights on the latest audio podcast at CFAX1070.com and on the free iHeartRadio app.
Well, it's the time of year where the endangered Vancouver Island marmot starts to wake up, which is a big time considering all the efforts that go in to try to reestablish this population and also, breed more marmots. Here to talk about it, Adam Taylor, Executive Director of the Marmot Recovery Foundation, with an update. Adam, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Ryan.
Always great to talk to you and always great to talk about the marmots. So I guess, first off, we're going to talk about what you guys are doing this time of year to try to continue your efforts. But like out there in the wilds, is this just when the marmots usually start to wake up from their hibernation, or do they hibernate, or what's going on right now?
Yeah, so for the past 7 months, marmots have been hibernating underground. They are just beginning now to dig out, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of snow there for them, but there is a lot of vegetation, which is great news. So, yeah, they emerge from hibernation, they dig out, and marmots immediately breed. As soon as they come out of hibernation, they start breeding activity. So we're seeing that in the facility, and we're crossing our fingers and hoping that the marmots in the wild are doing the same thing.
Yeah, so you hope for the ones in the wild to do it, but you've got these breeding programs because this is an endangered species we're trying to reestablish. And there are institutions all around the country who are involved in this, including the Wilder Institute and the Toronto Zoo. And this time they do some interesting things to try to get success in the breeding. What goes on right now? What do they need to do to make this work?
So one of the big challenges we have with the Vancouver Island marmot is that at its lowest point, there were fewer than 100 individuals, and there's not a lot of genetic variation. So in the conservation breeding programs, we try really hard to maximize the amount of genetic variation that we can, and that means really carefully picking who breeds with who. But introducing marmots can be a little bit of a tricky thing, and what we found is that it's actually best to introduce the marmots to each other while they're in hibernation so that when they wake up, it's just like, oh, look, there's, my new mate is there. And that seems to have the best results. So over the wintertime, we were working with our stud bookkeeper to identify which pairs should really be together. And now, we put them all together. And now as they're waking up, we're just really carefully observing and making sure that those pairings are going as well as we'd hoped. They don't always, and if they don't, then it's a bit of a rush. So we have a whole backup pairing system. So if the pair aren't getting along, then we have another mate lined up, and then we are trying to do switcheroos to make sure that the marmots are, as busy really as possible this time of year.
So if I get this straight, so that they're sleeping, they're hibernating, and you go in after you sort of made all the matches on paper, and you sort of like place the marmots you hope will breed next to each other, so they kind of wake up and go, oh, okay, I guess I'm with you now.
You got it.
So that's it.
And marmots that wake up together generally stay together. So sometimes we'll even see marmots that really didn't get along in the last summer, and we put them together again during hibernation, and they wake up and they're like, all right, this is great. We're friends now. Doesn't always work that way, unfortunately, but yeah, we really find that's the best time for introductions is during hibernation. That seems to be really facilitate marmots, engaging in reproduction at least.
And we mentioned that this is happening in a few places. You got the Toronto and Calgary zoos involved with this. Where does this all happen?
Yeah, so there's 3 breeding facilities. We have a facility at Mount Washington, which is dedicated just for Vancouver Island marmots. We have 89 marmots there. And then the Calgary Zoo Wilder Institute, they have 20 marmots at their facility in Alberta. And then the Toronto Zoo has another 18 marmots way out in Toronto. And the idea, again, for this, critically endangered species is we really don't want to have all our eggs in one basket. We don't want all the marmots in one place. We want to have the program split up just in case there were, some kind of disaster that happened, disease that got into the facility. That would be a huge percentage of the entire population of this species. So splitting it up it's an insurance mechanism to make sure that we always have at least one or two good populations that are safe.
Well, and that's a good chance to ask you where things are at when it comes to the numbers, because as you mentioned earlier, we got down to very, very few Vancouver Island marmots at all in existence. We got close to extinction. But where are the numbers now? How are things going?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, back in 2003, there were fewer than 30 wild Vancouver Island marmots left. And right now, we are expecting about 420 Vancouver Island marmots in the wild to wake up, and we have another roughly 120 in the conservation breeding program. So the species is recovering, and it's just incredible to see. I mean, it's amazing to see hundreds of marmots in the wild. That used to be just a pipe dream to have, over 400 individuals. But it is important to remember that still puts the Vancouver Island marmot as one of the most endangered mammal species on the planet. So it's incredible to see that the recovery effort is having success and that the species is responding, but we certainly still have a lot of work ahead of us to really ensure that the marmot has a secure future in the wild. I don't have a lot of time, but I have a texter with a question that I'd love to ask if you don't mind. They're just asking why you chose Mount Washington for the marmot program instead of a different park or a different mountain within Strathcona Park. Well, why that one of all mountains? Right. So partly because there is a wild marmot colony at Mount Washington, and there's also all of those other things, power, road access. So it was just an incredibly fortuitous for us to have a spot where we both had a wild colony, so the marmots in the facility experience exactly the same conditions as the wild marmots do, but also have all of those other really important amenities like power, road access. So it was a straight logistical decision in that regard that, this was a spot where we could build and have basically everything we wanted.
Well, thanks for the question at 71010, and thanks for the answer. We're talking to Adam Taylor, Executive Director of the Marmot Recovery Foundation. Always love to get the updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right, 7:30 News next with Lisa Best. Stand by.
From CFAX 1070.
Here's what's happening around the island. The Esquimalt Buccaneer Days takes over Archie Browning Sports Centre and Bullen Field, May 7th through 10th. Full schedule on esquimaltbuccaneerdays.ca. Sign up for the Walk for Alzheimer's, Sunday, May 31st at Fisherman's Wharf. More info at walkforalzheimers.ca. Get more event info at CFAX1070.com.
If it's happening, it's here.
CFAX 1070.
CFAX Victoria.
An iHeart radio station. If it's happening,
it's here.
CFAX 1070.
It's 7:31 on Wednesday, May the 6th. We're looking at some sunshine today, a few clouds, and highs up to 18 degrees. But watch out, it's cooler by the windy Wantafuca Strait. It does get a bit windy later today. We'll get you a full forecast in a moment. Right now, the news begins with Lisa.
Thank you. We begin with breaking news from the U.S. American entrepreneur and media mogul Ted Turner has died. That, according to a news release from Turner Enterprises. The founder of CNN and TBS passed away today at the age of 87. Turner leaves behind 5 children, adult children. He's known for transforming the cable industry by starting CNN in 1980. Ted Turner also gave $1 billion to create the UN Foundation. Turner owned the Atlanta Braves, as well as when they won the World Series in 1995 and the NBA's Atlanta Hawks. Once again, Ted Turner is dead at the age of 87. BC set a record this month for electricity use due to the warmer than normal temperatures we had to start May. BC Hydro says demand peaked Monday at around 7,600 megawatts, the highest level ever seen for this month, especially this early on, as many of us turned on air conditioners and fans to cool off. The utility is expecting electricity demand to remain above average until temps cool starting today. Nearly 70% of BC households now have some form of air conditioning inside. BC Ferry is modifying its policy around transporting EVs. The carrier will now accept immobile electric vehicles that are undamaged or have only minor cosmetic damage, stuff that does not compromise the vehicle's frame and battery integrity. Travel restrictions will remain in place for any vehicle not making the cut. BC Ferry says a new policy will go into place on Tuesday, May 19th, immediately following the long weekend. The new rules align with the federal transport of dangerous goods requirements and establish marine safety procedures. Big waves, a big topic of discussion during this Emergency Preparedness Week. A Canadian researchers who studied the Tracy Arm Fjord tsunami says the catastrophic potential of such big waves needs to be better monitored. Millions of tons of rock fell into Alaskan fjord last August, setting off a wave of sections as tall as 481 meters. It's among the largest tsunamis ever recorded, and by way of height, it could come close to touching the tip of the CN Tower in Toronto. The fjord sees more than 20 ships a day in the summer, but none were in the tsunami's path at the time, luckily. The study published by the journal Science says the warming of cold regions means similar hazards could happen in the future. Dan Sugar is an Earth and Environmental Science prof at the University of Calgary, one of the researchers involved in the study. He says this is a warning sign to do better monitoring the possible violent potential of fjords and glacial recession. He says it's especially true here on the BC coast, where there could be an increased tanker traffic if that new oil pipeline is built. The Oak Bay Tea Party will go ahead as usual, but it will not have a parade this year. All other events, including the Midway and entertainment, will continue as scheduled on the weekend of June 5th through 7th. Society spokesperson Sandy Germain says they're hopeful to bring the parade back next year.
Well, we just felt we didn't have the necessary time to be able to go through and make sure that we had everything in place that's required from the recommendations that came down in the report from Justice Hinkson. So it was a hard decision, but we chose to err on the side of caution and make sure that next year we know exactly what the procedures, protocol requirements are.
Similar scenario, of course, occurring with Esquimalt Buccaneers Day Parade, which would have happened this weekend. Buccaneers Days is going ahead as usual in Esquimalt. That's your news to 7:35. Your CFAX 1070 news poll question this morning, we're asking, are you prepared for a weather-related emergency? Over 50% saying no on our website. That number jumps to 67% on Twitter X. You can vote CFAX1070.com, Twitter X, or the iHeartRadio app. I'm Lisa Sebastian, News Time, 7:36.
Thank you, Lisa. We are looking at a sunny day, a little wind off the Wantafuka Strait, though, gusting up to 80 kilometers an hour by this evening. So the winds are going to build up. That's going to make it feel a bit colder if you're by the water. Otherwise, 18 degrees is the high, and right now it's 11. CFAX 1070 Sports now. We had the NHL draft last night. Today, it's the WHL draft. It's all drafty right now. It's not just the winds off the Wantafuka
bingo,
Strait.
though, don't you think?
Well, it was a little bit yesterday. Well, let's start there. So yesterday, the Vancouver Canucks, despite the fact that they finished last, will not get to pick first when it comes to the NHL draft. I mean, that's just the way it goes sometimes. It's the Toronto Maple Leafs who came up big winners. They overcame the odds with the little balls that you pick out of the thing.
B9.
Yeah, exactly.
I really wanted to yell something out.
They wanted bingo. They got the lottery bingo.
Funny.
It's the Leafs that get number one pick in next month's draft in Buffalo. The third time the Leafs will get to pick first. They took Austin Matthews back in 2016. They had Wendell Clark in 1985. Who will they get this year? We'll find out. And the Vancouver Canucks, with their last place finish in the standings, will have third pick overall, followed by the Calgary Flames at number 6 and the Winnipeg Jets at number 8. Now, the WHL prospects draft will happen this evening. For the Victoria Royals, they got number 7 and number 5 selections. The Kelowna Rockets will pick first overall. They got that in a trade. In the BCHL playoffs continuing, Nanaimo has taken a 3-0 lead in the Coastal Conference Final. They blanked Prince George 4-0 last night. Next game is tonight in Nanaimo, and they could sweep the whole thing with a win. And I'm kind of bouncing all over the place here, but let's go back to the NHL for a second, because last night the Colorado Avalanche beat the visiting Minnesota Wild 5-2, taking a 2-0 lead in their second-round best-of-7 NHL playoff series. Game 3 is on Saturday. In baseball, Toronto Blue Jays will be looking to snap a 3-game losing skid when they face the Tampa Bay Rays in the third and final game of the series in Florida today. Yesterday, they lost 4-3. Despite the Jays taking a 3-2 lead into the 8th inning. The NFL and its officials are moving a little closer towards an agreement that could avoid a work stoppage. A person with knowledge of the discussion told the Associated Press that after a long stalemate, negotiations have finally reached a point where the NFL Referees Association is planning to have a ratification vote this week. The NFL's collective bargaining agreement with the referees set to expire on May 31st. That's your sports to 7:39. CFAX Morning Show brought to you by Coastal Heat Pumps. For a comfortable home no matter the season and big savings on your heating bill, talk to Coastal Heat Pumps. Designed for comfort, the South Island's Elite Plus Fujitsu Air Stage dealer. Let's take a look at the traffic to start with. No crashes or accidents right now. We got the paving work back on Cook Street between Bay and Hillside. Watch out for delays there with closures to lanes. And with the BC Ferries, we've got a 8 o'clock sailing coming up with lots of room left for both vehicle deck space and, well, just the whole thing. For the weather, it's mainly sunny today. A little windy off the water to start, and it's going to get very windy by the water by the end of the day. So gusts up to 80 kilometers an hour this evening. Highs today of 18 degrees, but cooler by the water, and lows down to 9 degrees overnight. Tomorrow looks much the same. Mix of sun and cloud, but breezy. Highs of 17 degrees, cooler by the water. Friday, mix of sun and cloud, highs of 16. Then it warms up a bit again on the weekend. Saturday and Sunday, both looking like they'll be sunny with a few clouds and temperatures around about 20 degrees. Right now, by the way, 11 degrees, more or less, is the temperature we're seeing around the region. For the business news, stocks are all up across the board. Toronto S&P TSX up by 433 right now to 34,000 even. The Dow in New York is up 564 to 49,863. The Nasdaq is up 293 to 25,619 Canadian dollar at 73.4 cents US, which is up just a fraction of a cent from the close yesterday.
Ryan and Lisa are ready when you are.
Good morning.
Day or night, find the highlights under latest audio at CFAX1070.com and on the free iHeartRadio app.
A bit of drama in BC politics. This was Premier David Eby in question period yesterday.
I have never once been briefed by either the RCMP or CSIS about concerns related to any government caucus member or cabinet member, period. If I had been, members of the public should be aware, should know, that I would not hesitate to act, and at a minimum, if there was concern about a cabinet member, given the sensitive information that cabinet has access to, I would remove that person from cabinet.
Well, what's all this about? Well, it all started because former Vancouver Mayor Kennedy Stewart, on a radio appearance in Vancouver, had said that he was under the impression a BC cabinet minister was being investigated for allegedly collaborating with the Chinese government.
That's big.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty explosive.
Yes.
And he said that federal lawyers interviewed him. So this is, again, the Stewart saying it. He claims that federal lawyers interviewed him about this unnamed minister who, again, he claims is under investigation. So, of course, that reveal on radio in Vancouver caused questions in the legislature yesterday, which is why you just heard David Eby responding there. He went on to say this again.
I have had multiple such briefings. At every briefing I ask, is there any individual, any company, any information at all that you need to share with me, and I can advise this House, that never once has CSIS or the RCMP shared any concerns at all about any member of government caucus.
So,
okay, feisty.
What's going on then? The RCMP themselves say they were looking into a request for comment. So they're not commenting. They're looking into commenting. That's the RCMP's stance on this when asked.
Right.
So what's going on here? Who's telling the truth here?
Yeah, where's the truth lie?
Where is this? So let's talk to a legislative reporter who is diving into the story with the Canadian Press, Wolfgang Deppner. He's going to give us the latest on all these claims coming up in just a few moments. So some spicy BC politics to come on the show in just a moment. But first, let's get to the headlines. Here is Lisa.
Good morning. Victoria Police hoping for help in a string of arsons in the city's downtown core. Happened a couple weeks back on Tuesday, April 20th, early morning between 4:30 and 5:30 a.m. Now, Vic Major Crimes detectives say they're looking for dash cam footage from the area in the 1200 block of Johnson Street that morning. Please, anyone who may have this or any other information should be contacting Vic PD. North Saanich Council sharpened their pencils this month. A 5.5% municipal property tax increase is what they settled at for this year. That number down from over 7.5%. The reduction is an effort to balance the need for maintaining core municipal services and infrastructure with a continued focus on affordability for people who live in the area. The budget builds on extensive public engagement conducted earlier this year. 3 people removed from that cruise ship carrying 150 people, including 4 Canadian passengers, that was stuck in mid-Atlantic with this deadly hantavirus outbreak. The World Health Organization head Ted Andros Ghebreyesus says that the 3 were transported to the Netherlands with suspected cases of the virus. He says the UN Health Agency is now working with the operators of the cruise ship to monitor the health and crew of passengers, but we are learning that passengers are being taken by smaller boats to port at this point. And the U.S. president says military operations in the Strait of Hormuz are on hold, so a final agreement can be reached with Iran. The U.S. Navy was escorting the ships through the waterway in so-called Project Freedom. Iran calls this Project Freedom a violation of the current ceasefire. We'll keep you posted. That's your news to 746.
We will be talking BC politics and this allegation that somebody in the BC cabinet's being investigated for collaborating with the Chinese government. What's going on here? So that story coming up next. We'll also check traffic and weather. If you've got a crash, accident, or something else getting in your way, we'd love to hear about it at 71010.
Developing political story, a big doozy.
Vashi Capellos.
What started as a dull day is anything but.
The top newsmakers.
Your go-to political debrief. Daily.
What is really going on?
The breaking news.
Just moments ago.
And the entertaining analysis and debate to follow.
I don't think you can sugarcoat it. It's an issue.
It's not true, guys. Yeah.
Vashi Capellos.
There is a greater plan here.
Vashi Capellos. Weekdays, 9 a.m. to 11.
Bigger picture politically, which
is on CFAX 1070.
CFAX at 70 traffic and weather. We are looking at a day weather-wise that's going to be mostly sunny. A few clouds, bit of wind though, and by this afternoon, a lot of wind. By this evening, it's gusts up to 80 kilometers an hour off the Juan de Fuca Straits. This is mostly if you're Juan de Fuca Strait exposed. That's where you'll feel the wind the most, but just a heads up, that's coming. And it's going to make it feel a bit cooler today by the water. Highs of 18, cooler by the water. Clear skies tonight with lows down to 9 and that wind blowing. Tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud. We will see highs of 17, cooler by the water. Friday, mix of sun and cloud, highs of 16, so continuing that cooling trend right up into the end of the week. But then it turns around and gets warmer for the weekend. Saturday and Sunday both looking sunny, temperatures around about 20 degrees. No crashes or accidents on the commute. West Shore volume delays have kind of hit their peak. They're, backed up on Souk Road to around about the Royal Roads University entrance, which is pretty typical for this time of day. You really kind of start slowing down on the Trans-Canada Highway once you hit the Millstream overpass, and then you slog through the bus lane construction on the Trans-Canada. All looking fairly typical, though. And no sailing waits at BC Ferries.
Ryan and Lisa, mornings on CFAX 1070.
Well, this session of the BC legislature just keeps taking twists and turns, and with the latest on the allegations that maybe a BC minister is being investigated for collaborating with the Chinese government, let's talk to Wolfgang Deppner, a legislative reporter with the Canadian Press. Sir, how you doing?
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, this one needs a bit of unpacking, so I'm glad you're here to do it. So I was mentioning just before the break that this all starts, as far as I know, with a revelation made by the former mayor of Vancouver, Kennedy Stewart, on a Vancouver radio program. Talk us through how this all started and what we know about these claims.
Yeah, so he said during this interview with Jas Johal that he was interviewed by federal lawyers about a active BC cabinet member being investigated for helping China. Now, Jas Johal, who interviewed Kennedy Stewart, asked him to confirm not once but twice. And Stewart stuck with it. He said that an active, a current sitting member of the BC cabinet is under investigation for helping China. Now, I have to say that Jas Johal could have pressed Mr. Stewart a little bit harder about the identity of this active cabinet minister under investigation, because if you're making such a claim, you better bring along the evidence, or at least point people in the right direction. I also note with some interest that that the former Vancouver mayor did not respond to our requests for additional comment, nor did he repeat his claims elsewhere, as far as I can tell. So this circumspect behavior stresses his credibility, and government yesterday basically dismissed his claims on multiple occasions. Mark Farnworth, the premier, all dismissed Mr. Stewart's claims.
Now, the premier in question period, for instance, kind of along with what you're saying, mentioned that neither the RCMP nor CSIS, Canada's spy agency, nobody has ever come to him to raise concerns about his cabinet and caucus, and even the premier in sessions with the RCMP, when he's even asked, like, hey, is there any concern? It's never come up. So that was his line yesterday responding to this.
Yeah. So unless Mr. Stewart comes forward with the name of this active cabinet minister, we have to side with the premier. But I do agree with the broader analysis of your colleague Adam Sterling yesterday. I listened to his analysis of what the premier said with some interest, and your colleague once again alerted the public, I think, to a larger problem facing this government, namely a diminishing sense of credibility. Past deflection on issues like the Moscow Treaty and multiple pivots on DRIPA have made British Columbians, not to mention reporters, increasingly suspicious of the premier's position. Now, but I want to be absolutely clear: unless Mr. Stewart comes forward with the name of this active cabinet minister, we have to side with the premier and the government's denials.
But I guess that's an interesting point, that there's more to this. There's just a general sense of, disappointment in the current government for some reasons, for some people. And maybe in that atmosphere, something like this can kind of catch fire, whether or not there's anything behind the allegations.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this issue deepens the well of troubles into which this government has fallen. You probably reported on that poll that came out just earlier this week, which shows the NDP trailing the still leaderless Conservatives by 10 points.
Wow!
So the Conservatives are still looking for a leader, yet they're ahead by 10 points. Now polls are snapshots in time, so they always have to be read with some care. Now the premier's own popularity has dropped by some 20 points from the 50+%. Elbows up high, a little more than a year ago. So this particular issue, not necessarily the most important issue out there, certainly adds to the long list of troubles facing this government. Critics will see in this issue just another piece of confirming evidence that this government is losing or has lost the public's trust. And I would also argue, more importantly, the he said dynamic of the situation hardens the impression that our political caste is caught in its own games. Now, one of the things that really strikes me about this whole situation, though, is why Mr. Stewart would make this claim.
Yeah,
I can't really see any obvious reason why he would come forward and make such a claim, because if the claim turns to be untrue, if it remains unsubstantiated, the damage to his credibility will be immense. Now, Mr. Stewart has talked about re-entering municipal politics, but if he wanted to generate some attention for himself through that claim, it would come relatively late in the game. The next municipal election is just a little bit more than 5 months out. And while the issue of foreign interference is real, I don't see it being top of mind for many British Columbians. So overall, I cannot see any obvious rationale for Mr. Stewart to interject himself here with such a claim, unless he harbors some personal grudges against the current government, and this is a way to get some payback. Naturally, Mr. Stewart could clear this up himself if he sort of reveals the name of this person. If he comes forward, offers some additional context, if he can talk about who interviewed him, what exactly the context of this interview was, but so far it's all crickets, and naturally RCMP and the federal government have always been very silent on this as well. So there is a lot of uncertainty around this issue, and as I said earlier, it certainly complicates the life a little bit for this government.
Man, a lot of weirdness. You're right. There's a lot of questions still remaining out of this and what's happening. But one last question for you: Is it conceivable? And I'm just sort of hypothetically speaking here, like if there was such an investigation, just if. Is it conceivable that maybe the premier and cabinet would not be informed if it was kind of close to them? Like, is there a scenario where, the premier yesterday, his defense was like, hey, look, the RCMP or CSIS have never told me about this. But is there a scenario where they wouldn't because they, don't want to tip their hand or something?
Yeah. So the premier has to back up a little bit here. So the provincial government and CSIS haven't always had the best relationship, and the premier made this point yesterday that he has had to sort of get CSIS attention when it comes to getting information that is of some relevance. Now, I would argue that something like this would not be done. That if there is to be an investigation, I cannot see a scenario where the provincial government is left out in the dark because that would actually be negligent on behalf of the federal. That would actually be negligent on behalf of the federal government. If there is an investigation going on, it would be in the interest of the federal government to alert the provincial government about this very situation. So I cannot foresee a situation where the premier or cabinet are left in the dark, because if that's the case, that raises some serious questions about the federal government's role in all of this. Because why would you sort of let the situation unfold, especially if sensitive information is to be shared? You want to make sure that if there is to be sensitive information is shared, that the provincial government stops the flow of that information to any foreign government. Now, again, Mr. Stewart has a point insofar that the issue of foreign interference is real. It's well documented. We've had incidents going back to 2019, incidents going back to 2021. Other incidences as well in other areas of the Canadian political scene. So the issue is real. Now, whether or not this active cabinet minister, whether or not there is an active investigation against a sitting BC cabinet minister, that's forgive the vernacular, that's a big matzo ball hanging out there, and he better he better come with some receipts to show his claims.
We got to leave it there because we're out of time, but that really helps me unpack it. Thank you to Wolfgang Deppner, legislative reporter with the Canadian Press, and you can read more of his stories, of course, online. Much appreciated, and we'll talk again soon.
Pleasure's always mine. Thank you so much.
We'll take a break. We got the 8 o'clock news next.
CFAX Victoria.
An iHeart radio station. If it's happening,
It's here.
CFAX 1070.
It's 8:02 on Wednesday, May the 6th. A little late for the news, so let's get right to it. Here is Lisa Best.
Good morning. This is Mental Health Week across the country. This year's theme is Come Together Canada, strengthening community connections and reducing isolation. This is the tragic case of an Nanaimo man's on the radar at the BC legislature. Conservative MLA Claire Rattay says she's leading the charge for changes to the Mental Health Act.
Jesse Flowerdew's wife, Daisy, told me that he was a staunch advocate for men's mental health. He had a documented history of prior suicide attempts, so when he was struggling again, he self-admitted to the hospital and made it clear that he was struggling with suicidal ideation again. He was released from hospital shortly thereafter, and within an hour of his release, he was gone. His family was never notified, not when he was admitted, not when he was discharged.
Health Minister Josie Osborne recommitted to a review of the Mental Health Act to update and modernize it with families in mind, but Rattay pointed out that only takes one phone call. Claire Rattay will be a guest on the CFAX Morning Show in a few minutes at 8:20. Family members of a man killed in a Victoria supported housing building last year say they're still waiting for answers on how he died and exactly when his killer will be charged. 34-year-old Keith Scott was killed in April of 2025, found dead in a fire in a unit in the Waterview building. Cassie Bate, his ex-wife and mother of their daughter, says that she and the family members are puzzled as to why no charges have been laid since video evidence from the crime scene is now in police hands.
Doesn't seem super important to them. They have made it seem like, oh, we're super investigating this. It just takes time. It takes time to do forensics. It takes time to do all this. And it's like, look at the video. You know everybody in the video. You got the video. Like, do something about it. You know what I mean?
The Vancouver Island Integrated Major Crime Unit says the investigation into Scott's murder is ongoing, and family members say they still haven't been told his official cause of death. Add Saanich to the list of municipalities looking for a way to bring a doctor to town. Saanich Council voted 7-2 in favor of encouraging doctors' offices and medical clinics to be included in future developments. Staff have been directed to examine how planning and development tools could be used to increase the supply of clinic space in the district. The motion also wants staff to look at adding medical clinics and doctors' offices to the eligibility list for density bonuses. Emergency Preparedness Expo happening from 10 till 2 today on the lawn of the BC Legislature. Everything emergency in focus and safety tips for you as well. This is a new study suggests that massive tsunami in Alaska last year is a harbinger for potential disasters. The study looked at the August tsunami, which caused millions of tons of rockfall to crash into a fjord. It found that there could be future disasters like this, and continued warming causing glacial recession is a thing. University of Calgary Earth and Environmental Science professor and study researcher Dan Sugar says the tsunami is an example of what could happen in other fjord locations with possibly more disastrous consequences.
So, like on the West Coast, we do have Prince Rupert and Port Alberni. Like, we do have towns at the heads of some of these fjords. There's also a pretty big ecological impact. There's a lot of trees that got completely obliterated and habitat and probably animals, et cetera, that got obliterated by this tsunami.
There were no reported injuries or death due to last year's tsunami being in a very isolated area, but Sugar says there should be closer monitoring done. Senate Republicans have included $1 billion in the U.S. budget to pay for security at the new White House ballroom. This after the U.S. president said it would be fully funded by donors.
This money is tucked into a broader $70 billion bill to fund ICE and Customs and Border Protection, two agencies that were left out of that bipartisan deal to recently reopen the rest of the Department of Homeland Security. The money can be used, the bill says, just for security, not general construction, but it's unclear exactly what that would entail at this hour. It's still got to pass both the House and the Senate, but because it's in a budget bill, Republicans can pass it with just a party line vote. They wouldn't need Democrats.
And that's your CFAX News to 8:06. Your CFAX 1070 news poll question we're asking, are you prepared for a weather-related emergency? Just over 50% saying no on our website. That number jumping to 2/3, 67% on Twitter X. You can vote CFAX1070.com, Twitter X, also the iHeartRadio app. And Lisa, best news time is 8:08.
Thanks, Lisa. Let's take a look at your weather real quick. At the very moment, it is 13 degrees at the Victoria International Airport. We're eventually heating up to a high of 18, but do expect some wind as a factor today. Over to CFAX 1070 Sports. The Vancouver Canucks will not have the first pick in the NHL draft, despite having the best odds of getting that as they headed into yesterday's draw. No, the team lost out to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the Vancouver Canucks secure pick number 3 overall. So Leafs get the first pick. San Jose Sharks will pick second. The Canucks, despite their last place finish, will get third pick overall. Third was actually the lowest the Canucks could mathematically fall to after their dismal season that saw them finish at 25, 49, and 8. So they... the hockey gods continue not to be with the Vancouver Canucks, I guess, is the short story there. For another draft story, in the WHL, their prospects draft is happening this evening. The Royals here in Victoria will have picks number 7 and 5. The Kelowna Rockets pick first overall because of trade deal. The BCHL, let's talk about the playoffs there. Nanaimo has taken a 3-0 lead in the Coastal Conference Final. They blanked Prince George 4-0 last night in Nanaimo. And the next game, Game 4, is tonight, and with it, if Nanaimo wins again, they could sweep the series. In the NHL last night, Colorado Avalanche beat the visiting Minnesota Wild 5-2, taking a 2-0 lead in the second round best-of-7 NHL playoff series there. Game 3 for that one is going on Saturday. And back to Canucks news. Sorry, I'm bouncing around all over the place. Jim Rutherford is stepping down as the Vancouver Canucks president of hockey operations. The 77-year-old 3-time Stanley Cup winner was hired back December of 2021. And he plans now to transition into an advisor role after the NHL draft taking place later this month, next month in Buffalo.
I put together a really good staff here going forward. And this is something I've thought about anyways for a couple of years, but it's time for me to do that. I feel bad that I have to do it at such a young age, but I've decided to do it anyways.
The news comes after the Canucks finished the season last in the standings. That is your sports to 8:10. CFAX 1070 traffic and weather. It is 8:11 on a Wednesday morning. No crashes or accidents that I know of, but if you see something, let me know. It's 71010. And for the West Shore commute, here's an example. I sometimes like to pick on an area and see what the commute times are. From the Royal Roads University area of Colwood into downtown Victoria, that's taking you about 35 to 40 minutes, which is, not as bad as it can get, but still a bit of a slowdown. And for the BC ferries, no sailing waits at this time. Watch out for wind in the forecast today. That's going to be one of the things that changes it up a little bit. We got mostly sunny skies, highs of 18 degrees, but a little cooler by the Juan de Fuca Strait, where the winds will be blowing, becoming more of a factor into the evening and overnight, where we'll gust up to 80 kilometers an hour off of the Juan de Fuca Strait, with lows going down to 9. Tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud. We'll see highs of 17, a little cooler by the windy water again. Friday, mix of sun and cloud, highs of 16, but then it warms up again a bit for the weekend. Saturday and Sunday looking sunny with temperatures around 20 degrees. On the mark markets, major gains across the board. S&P TSX up 451 points to 34,018 points. The Dow in New York up 605 to 49,903. The S&P 500 is up 83 points to 7,342. Canadian dollar at 73.4 cents US. It's down just a touch right now, but it's been kind of waffling a little bit. The Canadian dollar's just up a little bit, down a little bit. It's been staying mostly the same through the day. And the barrel of oil now down $7.35 US compared to yesterday, down to $94.92 US a barrel. There's some talk of peace in the Middle East. We've heard that before, but it's happening again, and we're seeing oil prices dropping today at least.
The best way to start an island morning. Ryan and Lisa on CFAX 1070.
Yeah, funny. Those gas prices, they're still up. We got the oil price down worldwide, but here in the Victoria area, we started the day yesterday. If you remember, Lisa, we were talking all about gas prices, and we had you out there texting us throughout the day when you spotted the prices going up, because by the end of yesterday, we were pretty much 226.9.
So 227.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
So we're 227, and electric vehicles are looking pretty sexy right now.
Yeah, I wonder if that's going to fuel a return, because we of course saw a bit of a slump in electric vehicle sales. You had the return of the U.S. president, Donald Trump, who's not very EV friendly. You saw a lot of, in Canada, the rebate programs were starting to end and the mandates were starting to end. There was a lot of reasons why
The rebates
were probably the big thing, but a lot of sales slumped in the last year.
Yes.
But now we got rebates back. Now we've got gas prices spiking. I do wonder if EV sales will see a spike this year because of all of this.
I think they will, simply because of the cost of fuel.
Yeah.
If it continues to go up, if it goes down, then maybe people will relax on it. But at the very least, a hybrid, because if you don't have somewhere to plug in, that's another thing, right?
Yeah, challenge for some people. Or if you live in an apartment or something, you don't have a place to...
That's the point.
Yeah.
You've got to have somewhere to plug in. And I look at it and think, okay, where would I plug in? Because that's the next question in your head. It's not about running out of fuel, because, that's been fixed. So you think, well, I have to charge it somewhere. Where's that going to happen? So, is the idea a provocative one? Yeah, take on an EV if you can, but it has to work with your lifestyle as well. And for as much as fossil fuel costs, it's still the low-hanging fruit, because there's a gas station on every corner at 226.9.
Yeah, Texter at 71010 points out in the news, and I know you've been reading this story today, Lisa. Honda just canceled their EV plant because of lack of demand. There's an example of
and that's a
where
lot of
things are
jobs
flowing.
that were coming to Canada that aren't now. So yes, I do think there's a lot of change afoot, and it would be really nice if we could come up with a power source that just blows both of these out of the water. Not unlike the way Betamax went when DVDs took over and CDs and everything. But that was my comparison. There's got to be other fuel sources out there. We just haven't dug deep enough for them, because
bring on the flux capacitor or whatever it is.
Well, that's sounding pretty good right now, because that doesn't cost that much. And it is painful, and I feel bad for people who have to drive. Think of contractors. Anybody who has to drive a distance for their job, they have to do it. You've got family, you've got to get them around town. It's just big money, and you think the extra 10 or 20 or 30, $40 more you got to put in your gas tank, simply because of, a lot of people think a war that shouldn't have started in the first place. That's underway.
All right. Well, hey,
we're paying.
It's 8:16. Time for the headlines. So what else is going on in the news? Here's Lisa.
The BC Conservation Service concerned about reports of illegal fishing north of the Nanaimo. It's Robotham Lake that's on the radar. It's advising people that patrols will be increased to deal with the situation. Robotham Lake has water body specific regulations that require the release of all trout, single, barbless hook, and artificial fly only. The use of bait is prohibited in addition to the general provincial regulations in place. And while you're out in the wilderness, remember that May is Lyme Disease Awareness Month. One health official offering some prevention tips. They say the disease is transmitted through black-leg ticks. They're actually quite small, so you've got to look for them. They say that's the best to cover up. as much skin as possible when outdoors. Wear long sleeves pants, preferably a light color. Use an EPA-registered repellent spray with at least 20% DEET in it, and do tick checks on your body twice a day. They move fast, actually. Lyme disease symptoms can develop within a few days after being bitten. They include fever, headache, chills, body aches, so think of flu-like conditions, and also that telltale bullseye rash that develops at the bite site. You need to get medication soon to deal with it. Otherwise, you've got long-standing issues. Spirit Airlines is starting its bankruptcy process after attending court in New York yesterday. About 17,000 employees expected to be laid off during the process, which could now take months. Spirit, of course, suddenly canceled flights for thousands of people over the weekend, ceasing operations after more than 30 years in business. Bit of a cautionary tale with the cost of jet fuel is what it is nowadays. That is your news to 8:18.
Just a little warning for people. The next topic involves suicide as one of the topics of discussion, but the Conservative opposition mental health critic is calling for Mental Health Act reform after a man in Nanaimo died by suicide shortly after being released from a hospital psychiatric unit. And the ask for change includes mandatory family or designated contact notifications upon discharge for people who have expressed an intent to hurt themselves, something I guess didn't happen in this case. We're going to find out more. The opposition mental health critic joining us on the line right after traffic and weather to talk more about what they'd like to see change to prevent these kind of deaths. That's next. CFAX at 70 traffic and weather. No crashes, no accidents on the roads. It's a fairly typical West Shore commute, taking about 40 minutes to get from the Royal Roads area of Colwood into downtown Victoria as an example of where things are at. For the BC Ferries, no sailing waits right now. 9 o'clock sailing is next from Swartz Bay to Tsawwassen. There is still vehicle deck space available. And for the weather, mainly sunny today. Highs of 18 degrees, but cooler by the Juan de Fuca Strait, where it will be breezy today. And those winds will get quite gusty by tonight, where we'll see 80-kilometer-an-hour winds off of the Juan de Fuca Strait at their peak, lows down to 9. Then tomorrow, another mix of sun and cloud. And in fact, the whole next 7 days looking sunny with a few clouds here and there. And by the weekend, back to temperatures in and around 20 degrees after we kind of have this cooling trend in the midweek.
Let's get started.
Start your day informed and entertained. Ryan and Lisa, mornings on CFAX 1070.
Joining us now on the line, member of the legislature and Conservative opposition mental health critic Claire Ratti is joining us to talk about the reforms she would like to see to the Mental Health Act in the aftermath of the death of a man up in Nanaimo, Jesse Flowerdew. Claire Ratty, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
We've been hearing your story in the news today, and the issue you brought up in the legislature this week, and the calls you're making for change. But maybe if you could bring us up to speed on the story that has brought this into focus.
Mm-hmm. So it's actually not a new call. This is something that our caucus has been calling for over a year now. We had a private member's bill that was brought forward in the spring session of last year, and it was pulled subsequently because the Minister of Health assured that member that the changes needed were forthcoming. We're now a year later. Those changes had not been implemented, and now we've had another most likely preventable death as a result of the government not acting. So what we're asking for is very simple. It's changes to the Mental Health Act that would require when somebody is detained under the Mental Health Act, regardless of whether it was voluntary, as it was in Jesse Flowerdew's case, that there would be a mechanism by which to make sure that a family member or a designated person is contacted and kept up to speed on the care plan and particularly the discharge. This is something that over the last couple of years, I know of several instances in which someone either self-admitted or presented to the hospital in some fashion, expressing suicidal ideation and a desire to harm themselves. And upon release, no one was notified. They were basically just allowed to leave the hospital and shortly thereafter tragically took their own lives. And I think specifically in this case, having met with Jesse's wife and Jesse's sisters, I can certainly say that because he had a documented history of struggling with these issues in the past, the family was aware of that, and they felt very firmly that had they been notified that he had even presented to hospital in the first place, let alone then been discharged, he would still be with us today if they had been informed. His wife was out of town for work at the time. He didn't inform anyone in his family that he was, presented to the hospital, that he was struggling again. It had been a few years since his last attempt, and so they thought he was doing okay, and nobody contacted the family. Nobody kept them informed. Within an hour of his release from hospital, tragically, he took his own life. And had any one of the family members been called and informed, he would likely still be here today. So I think it's a very simple change. I think that it's something that makes sense. It's something that has been advocated for heavily. There was an ombudsperson's report that was also calling for the same changes. This is something that just needs to be implemented. It's very simple. If somebody has expressed any interest in harming themselves or others and they have been detained under the Mental Health Act, someone should be notified upon their release so that there is a way to make sure that they are cared for. We know that hospitals are significantly over capacity right now, particularly psychiatric units are overwhelmed. I think that likely contributes to the possibility of someone being released early from care earlier than they should be. And so with that strain on the hospitals right now, I think that this is bare minimum that we try and share that load a little bit with the family members and get help from them to ensure that that person remains safe and gets the care that they need.
Is the issue kind of patient-doctor confidentiality, which, usually if you have an issue and you deal with the medical system, that is confidential and private information. Is that why we've got this issue here? Why information like this doesn't get shared?
Yeah, I mean, there is no requirement at this point in time. And I think that the key piece here is that this is something that is requiring involvement with the Mental Health Act. Regardless of what the situation is that requires that hold under the Mental Health Act, like I said, whether it's voluntary, involuntary, whether it's suicidal ideation, whether it's mental illness, whether, any number of things, typically what that means is that there is a chemical imbalance going on in your brain. And I think that as a clinician, clinicians need to be able to recognize that when somebody is in that state of mind, they're not likely capable of making the best choices in their best interest. And that's why it is important to have someone else involved in that process. I think most people will have somebody that they love, that they care about in their life, that they would be comfortable with having that information shared with. And I think what's actually more concerning is if somebody is presented with suicidal ideation and they say, oh, no, I don't have anybody I want you to contact. I'm fine now. I can leave. That should actually be the biggest red flag for clinicians to intervene or at least keep that person there, because that is a huge warning sign that someone has made up their minds that they are going to proceed. with their original intentions, and that should be a big warning sign. And, it's really no different than you think about when somebody goes in for surgery. They don't let you leave the hospital on your own. You have to have someone with you. You can't drive a vehicle. There has to be a care plan in place about how you are going to get back to your residence, who is going to watch over you. No different with, a concussion, a head injury, so many other things in which we ensure that there is a care plan in place and that there's somebody to take care of and watch out for that person. I don't understand how this is any different. So, obviously there is a certain level of concern around that patient confidentiality, but there are ways to work around that. It's not that difficult to find some kind of a system, or keeping somebody in the hospital then until the clinician can say with absolute certainty that this is no longer an issue.
Those are the changes my guest would like to see and the BC Conservative Party would like to see. We're talking to Claire Rattay, the Conservative critic for mental health and addictions and housing supports. Thank you so much for sharing the story and sharing those calls for change with us here.
Great. Thank you so much.
We'll take a break, but the 8:30 news coming up next on CFAX 1070.
From CFAX 1070.
Here's what's happening around the island. The Esquimalt Buccaneer Days takes over Archie Browning Sports Centre and Bullen Field, May 7th through 10th. Full schedule on esquimaltbuccaneerdays.ca. Sign up for the Walk for Alzheimer's, Sunday, May 31st at Fisherman's Wharf. More info at walkforalzheimers.ca.
Get more event info at CFAX1070.com.
If it's happening, it's here.
CFAX 1070.
CFAX Victoria.
An iHeart radio station. If it's happening,
it's here.
CFAX 1070.
Good morning. It's 8:31 on this Wednesday, May the 6th. Mix of sun and cloud today, maybe a little on the sunnier side. Highs of 18, but cooler by the water. And right now we're looking at 13 degrees in Victoria. Full forecast to come. Right now the news begins, and here is Lisa Best.
Breaking news from the U.S. Philanthropist, media mogul, and CNN founder Ted Turner has died. He was 87. Turner, who based his media companies in Atlanta, was also known for his investments in Atlanta-based sports teams like the Braves. ABC's Lindsay Davis also says that Turner was very vocal about the issues he cared about.
Turner was also a famed environmentalist and philanthropist, pledging $1 billion to create the UN Foundation and establishing the Turner Foundation to protect air, water, and land.
Are we going to make the right choices that will allow us to exist for another million years here on this beautiful paradise of a planet that we're on? Or are we going to turn it into a desert?
He was one of America's most extensive landowners. Turner leaves behind 5 adult children. The U.S. president says Project Freedom has been disbanded due to what he says is a pending deal with Iran. But he says there's mixed messaging from the White House as to whether a deal is within reach. This as the situation remains stalled again in the Strait of Hormuz, and gas prices are the highest we've seen since 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine. They haven't budged today, but we don't really need them to. We're hovering around 227 a litre in Greater Victoria. Canadians across this country are going to hear a shrill, shrieking siren of the public alert system again today.
A test message and a tone from Alert Ready will be broadcast on television, radio, and compatible wireless devices. Test messages will be issued in nearly every province and territory except for Quebec and Saskatchewan at specific times between morning and early afternoon, with Ontario's test set for Thursday. The system is typically tested in May and November and is part of Canada's efforts to ensure it works and raise awareness. There is no option to opt out of the test or actual emergency alerts. Rob Westgate, The Canadian Press.
There's a place to go for tips, safety tips for you locally if the worst case scenario was to evolve. The Emergency Preparedness Expo happens 10 to 2 today at the BC Legislature, featuring first responders and response vehicles, so you can get lots of answers to any questions you may have. At least one researcher says the study of a massive tsunami in Alaska last year is a warning that we need better monitoring. That 2025 tsunami was the second largest in recorded history, but there were no casualties based on where it was. Very remote location. University of Calgary Earth Environmental Science professor and study researcher Dan Sugar says it's a threat that people need to be thinking about, as more and more ships could be dotting the BC coastline.
It doesn't mean that we should, ban all cruise ships and all tankers from like any part of the coast. It just means that we really need to, we policymakers and scientists need to think about these threats seriously and really study the slopes.
The study says the landslide that led to the tsunami was the result of glacial recession. Privacy watchdog releasing a report today on OpenAI, the U.S.-based tech company behind the popular AI-powered chatbot ChatGPT.
Federal Privacy Commissioner Philippe Dufresne said just over 3 years ago that his office was investigating a complaint alleging the collection, use, and disclosure of personal information without consent. The findings will be delivered by Dufresne and his counterparts from British Columbia, Alberta, and Quebec, who collaborated on a joint probe. They plan to discuss their conclusions at a news conference in Ottawa. Diana Mussina, The Canadian Press.
And the ordeal is finally ending for passengers accrued aboard that cruise ship in the Atlanta with the hantavirus outbreak.
Nearly 150 people were aboard the Dutch ship MV Hondius when a 70-year-old man died of hantavirus. His wife later died of the same illness. The death of a German man has not been verified as hantavirus. The ship has been denied docking, but now passengers are being evacuated in small boats, taken by ambulance to the airport in Cape Verde off the coast of Africa and flown to the Netherlands. Jim Ryan, ABC News.
That's your CFAX News to 8:35. Your CFAX 1070 news poll question. Are you prepared for a weather-related emergency? 52% saying no on our website, 67% saying no on Twitter X. You can vote, CFAX1070.com, Twitter X, or the iHeartRadio app. And Lisa, best your news time is 8:36.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning. Welcome to Wednesday. It's a little blustery off the Juan de Fuca Strait, at least more so into the later part of the day. Watch out for some strong winds coming at us off the Juan de Fuca Strait later on. But otherwise, it's another sunny day, a few clouds, and pleasant temperatures. Right now, we're sitting at 13, heading towards a high of 18. CFAX 1070 Sports. Let's talk hockey, where the Vancouver Canucks, despite the last place finish in the NHL, managed to get the worst possible draft draw that they could have at that draft lottery yesterday. I guess mathematically speaking,
yes,
the one that they got was the worst they could have got. They got third place, third pick.
Well, it could be worse then.
No, it couldn't. Apparently, like out of
be bright about
out of
it.
the way all the math in the draw and the balls and the bingo thing they do, I guess this was the worst they could have come out with. And the hockey gods continue not to be with the Vancouver Canucks.
What did we do wrong?
I don't know. Like what did we do wrong?
What is it? It's because we're getting good weather, we get bad hockey picks? What?
Is that what it is?
I don't know. There's got to be some correlation.
Something is going on. Anyways, but you know who did get the first pick?
Yes.
The Toronto Maple Leafs. They beat the odds because the way the weighting of the balls and the odds making was all put together.
Bingo.
Hockey
bingo.
They managed to beat the odds, get the first pick. San Jose Sharks will pick second. Vancouver Canucks will have the third pick. Still, the poor showing does still ensure that the Canucks will be picking higher than it has in a whole generation. The last time the Canucks held a better pick than third was in 1999. That's when the team used the second and third picks in the draft to select franchise legends Daniel and Henrik Sedin. So it worked out for us last time. Hopefully we'll do something good with it come next month in Buffalo. That's when it's going to happen. We also have the WHL Prospects Draft happening this evening, and the Victoria Royals will pick 7 and 5. The Kelowna Rockets have first pick overall. They got that in a trade. In the BCHL last night, the Coastal Conference Final continues between Nanaimo and Prince George. The Clippers blanked Prince George 4-0, and with that, they took a 3-0 lead in the series. And they could finish it off tonight. The game 4 is tonight back in Nanaimo, and with that, it could be a sweep for Nanaimo if they manage to pull it off. They could win it at home. We'll see. Quick look at the Toronto Blue Jays, who will be looking to snap a 3-game losing skid when they face the Tampa Bay Rays in the third and final game of their series in Florida today. They lost last night 4-3. Despite taking a 3-2 lead into the 8th inning, they still managed to drop the game. Couldn't quite hold on to it. And that's your sports to 8:39. CFAX 1070 traffic and weather. It's 8:40, and we are looking at a fairly typical commute. No crashes, no accidents. It's taking about 35 to 40 minutes to get from Royal Roads into downtown Victoria. That's sort of the neighborhood I'm picking on right now, that part of Colwood. That's the commute time, which is not the worst it can get. For BC Ferries, Swartz Bay to Swanson, 9 o'clock sailing is next. Lots of room left. And in the weather forecast, we're looking at a mainly sunny day. Some wind off the Wantafuka Strait, which really starts to get gusty by tonight. Highs of 18, cooler by the water. Lows overnight of 9. Tomorrow, a mix of sun and cloud, highs of 17. Again, cooler by the water. Friday, mix of sun and cloud, highs of 16. Saturday and Sunday will be sunny with temperatures around about 20 degrees. Now to the markets. What's happening? S&P TSX up 462 points to 34,029. The Dow is up 559. Sorry, make that 598. It just changed on me to 49,896. The Canadian dollar at 73.4 cents U.S. That's down just a fraction of a cent. And the Canadian dollar, the crude oil barrel is down $7.50 compared to yesterday, which is a big drop, down to $94.77 U.S. a barrel.
It's all here. News, weather, traffic, and community events. Ryan and Lisa, mornings on CFAX 1070.
Texter says, I'd be happy with third pick over 16th. What are you talking about, worst pick? Do you know how math works? Well, Texter, I think because we finished last, we were guaranteed to have one of those top picks. but with the draft, it can kind of move our position a little bit. And that's what happened. We kind of bumped down a couple to about the worst we could have done, given the other sort of, things going into the odds. That's my understanding, but I don't know anything. So you could be right. I could be wrong. I'm just passing it along.
Who's better at math?
Exactly. Math is not my strong suit. That's why I went into radio, but
I still think it's funny we use little bingo balls.
It is pretty funny.
And I think, and you can see the joy on their face. Oh, we get to play a game.
Yeah.
It's got ramifications, but it's still a game.
The hockey draft balls. It is funny. Hey, completely different topic. Mm-hmm. There is, of course, this thing that's been happening in health news for, a little while now that has revolutionized weight loss around the world. And this, of course, is drugs like Ozempic, these semaglutide things.
Which was a game changer for diabetics.
Yeah, to start with.
That's how it started.
Yeah, it started as a diabetes
treatment.
treatment.
And then someone said, hey, we could lose weight doing this.
And then all of a sudden, this is a huge industry. And it's in the news in Canada recently because the original one has gone generic. We now are able, it's past its, patent or whatever has happened. We've gotten to the point where now in Canada, we can have generic versions of the name brand Ozempic.
In other words, cheaper versions.
Yes.
So if you're trying to lose weight, whether you need to or not, you can get into this.
Just a few days ago, Health Canada approved a second generic version of Ozempic. This one's a Canadian manufactured one. And a few days before that, they'd approved a different generic version, which is going to be manufactured elsewhere in the world, but they're approved for use in Canada. But all of a sudden, like you said, these cheaper versions of this weight loss drug are now going to start making its way into the Canadian market. So with that, I thought it might be a good time to start a few conversations about this. Maybe we should learn a bit more about what this is meaning for the health of Canadians. What do we need to know about drugs like Ozempic and these generic versions of them that are going to start to show up?
What are the side effects?
Is that, are there?
Because, there are, and we're learning more and more about the side effects as more and more people glom onto this, not necessarily to control diabetes, but to lose weight easily.
So to start a series of what I'm hoping will be some conversations about this, we've got the medical director of BC Diabetes. He's also a clinical associate professor at UBC. His name's Dr. Tom Elliott. He's going to join us in just a moment to weigh in on this news and just these drugs in general as we continue or begin some coverage on that. Stay tuned. But first, the news with Lisa.
Well, you may not have the money for the groceries, but Loblaws certainly does. It's reporting an increase in both profit and sales in the first quarter. The company behind Loblaws and Shoppers Drug Mart raised its quarterly dividend to 10% as it reported a profit of nearly $600 million. That's up from $503 million a year earlier. Loblaw also reported first quarter revenue of $14.72 billion. That's up from $14.14 billion a year earlier. The UN Health Agency says 3 people from that cruise ship, patients with suspected hantavirus infections, are being flown to the Netherlands now. The ship involved in the deadly outbreak remains off Cape Verde. The World Health Organization says 8 cases have been recorded now, with 3 confirmed by lab tests. Those 3 people have died. The ship's doctor, initially in serious condition, is now upgraded to stable. Meantime, 2 Argentine officials investigating the origin of the outbreak says the government's leading hypothesis is that the Dutch couple that were passengers on board who died contracted the virus during a bird watching outing before they actually boarded. And a new survey finds a sharp generational split on how Canadians are approaching travel to the U.S. this year. The survey finds 45% of Gen Z Canadians say they're likely to travel stateside next year, compared to just 8% of boomers. Among Canadians traveling this year, 61% of Gen Z say the U.S. is on their itinerary, compared to 14% of boomers. Europe now ranks ahead of the U.S. as Canada's top international destination. At the same time, over 1 in 3 Canadians say they plan to stay domestic and travel exclusively within Canada's borders. That's your news to 8:46.
More on generic versions of Ozempic as we talk to a medical director at BC Diabetes. That's coming up in just a moment. We'll also take a look at traffic and weather. We're hearing about a crash on the Pat Bay Highway. If you've got an update on that, text us at 71010.
From CFAX 1070.
Here's what's happening around the island. The Esquimal's Buccaneer Days takes over Archie Browning Sports Center and Bullen Field, May 7th through 10th. Full schedule on esquimalbuccaneerdays.ca. Sign up for the Walk for Alzheimer's, Sunday, May 31st at Fisherman's Wharf. More info at walkforalzheimers.ca.
Get more event info at CFAX1070.com.
If it's happening, it's here.
CFAX 1070.
CFAX traffic. All of a sudden, we got two crashes to tell you about in the city. Johnson Street at Fernwood, a collision affecting things. And, of course, Johnson Street is one way at that point, so it's heading out of town. Johnson at Fernwood, a collision there, slowing things down. And then on the Pat Bay Highway, a collision, which is right along Elk Lake. Crash, Pat Bay Highway at Elk Lake. Watch out for those two spots that are causing trouble right now. For the rest of the traffic and weather, let's talk about the weather. Sunny for today for the most part. A few clouds here and there. And windy. Highs of 18. Cooler by the water. And by this evening, the gusts off the Juan de Fuca Strait will reach 80 kilometers an hour. So quite strong winds coming at us tonight. With another mix of sun and cloud tomorrow with temperatures up to 17 degrees. Again, cooler by the water. A CFAX Morning Show brought to you by Thrifty Foods. At Thrifty Foods, happy celebrating Mom this Saturday from 10 until 1. The first 200 kids aged 12 and under are invited to decorate a free cake for Mom at all locations.
Don't attempt your morning commute without us. Ryan and Lisa, mornings on CFAX 1070.
Well, let's talk more about GLP-1s, often known by the brand name Ozempic, making waves in the health world for a while, and now Health Canada has approved not one but two generic versions for use in this country. What does this mean for people who already use the drugs or might sometime use the drugs? What do we need to know about this stuff? Here to talk about it, Dr. Tom Elliott is medical director with BC Diabetes. He's also a clinical associate professor at UBC. Sir, hello, how are you?
Good morning, Ryan.
Great to get you here. So first off, I guess just your initial thoughts on seeing the generic versions of Ozempic approved in Canada. What do you think about this news?
Well, the bottom line is that Ozempic, or generic Ozempic, is going to be cheaper, so it's a good thing. More competition, and as more and more of the generic manufacturers come on board, we could see prices drop down to 35% of the current Ozempic price, which would be around $3 a day, Ryan. So it's very, very good news for your listeners, for my patients on Ozempic, and for people who haven't been able to afford it as yet.
Now, you are with, of course, BC Diabetes, and that's where all of this started, right? These types of drugs were initially used for diabetes treatment and still are. Could you talk about how that works?
Well, yeah, the drugs were first identified as being indicated in diabetes and type 2 diabetes. You know, they increase insulin production, they suppress appetite, they delay the emptying of the stomach. So the net effect of that is lower sugar and lower weight. And then it was realized that these drugs caused weight loss in people who didn't have diabetes. So, you know, the class of drug now is widely used, not just for diabetes, but for obesity and overweight as well.
Now, with the Drugs and its diabetes use, I guess let's just focus on that for a second. The generic versions, I gather, are going to help out there, or were people who use it for diabetes already covered by, healthcare plans, or how is the generic version going to change that end of it? And then we'll get to the weight loss part afterwards.
Okay. Well, that's a big question. I hope Josie Osborne, the Minister of Health, or her Chief of Staff, is listening, because Ryan, National Pharmacare came in for diabetes March 1st, and it covered all diabetes pills and biosimilar or generic insulins. The one thing it didn't cover from the first dollar was GLP-1s, represented in this province by Ozempic. And let's face it, it's based on price. So if multiple generic manufacturers can bring the price down to $3 a day, that's a level at which I think the drug should be covered from first dollar, so not subject to the deductible. Currently, Ozempic is covered by BC Pharmacare, but it's subject to the deductible, which means, take your net family income, which in BC is around 100K, subtract 13,700, leaving you about 87,000, and multiply that by 3%, and that's the average deductible in this province, around $2,400. So most British Columbian families have to spend $2,400 before they get a cent back. So I think that's going to change, and let's hope it does.
So even for folks,
otherwise people are paying out of pocket, and of course, the cheaper it is, the better it is.
So then I guess for folks who take this for diabetes, this is going to be a game changer, because the generic versions will let there be cheaper versions of this drug available. What do you think about the way it's gone beyond diabetes and to weight loss, where it's really making a splash, and has been for a long time? It's almost become sort of a bit more normalized that this is a drug people are taking. Weight loss is becoming this kind of weight loss is becoming a much more common thing. How do you feel about that?
I feel generally very good about it. We've never had treatments for obesity that are safe and effective and work for years. And now we have a class of drugs that are just fantastic. So, yes, of course, they are abused by people who don't need them, who are trying to squeeze into a dress or a suit from back in the day. But the vast majority of people on these drugs are on them for good reasons, and I think it's wonderful.
Are there side effects that are starting to show themselves with this being kind of a new thing in the grand scheme of things, and now being widely adopted for all the reasons we've just talked about? Are there any concerns or cautions that we should be looking at?
Well, Ryan, I think it's fair to say that about 1 in 20 people who try this class of drugs, there's Ozempic for diabetes, there's Wegovy for obesity. They're both the same drug, semaglutide. There's Mounjaro for diabetes. There's Zepbound for obesity. That's another drug called tirzepatide. 1 in 20 people won't be able to take them because of nausea and vomiting. The other 19 might feel a little bit of something when they start, but the side effects will diminish, and they'll do very well. So the only real caveat is that you might get nausea and vomiting. Some people get indigestion, some people get constipation. When you hear about other conditions, pancreatitis, gallstones, there's really very minimal linkage between those drugs and those conditions. There is one extraordinarily rare eye condition. It affects about 1 in 20,000 people, or is it 50,000 that might be linked to these drugs? So by and large, we're talking about a very safe and effective class of drug. And as you've just alluded, the price is going to drop dramatically in the next weeks and months.
And how do you access it here in BC? Like, is this something you have to be prescribed? How do you go about getting it?
Yeah, you ask your doctor for a prescription. Now, I should say that, that lifestyle therapy comes first, and it's always first. So that means healthy eating, not eating when you're sad, tired, lonely, bored, or anxious. Eating at meal times, putting food on the plate when the plate's empty, push away from the table. Healthy eating, reducing carbs in general, specifically white carbs, so white bread, white rice, white potato and stuff, filling up on beans and green vegetables, nuts and meat, and then exercise. So lifestyle is paramount, and it's first, and it's assumed that everybody who goes on these drugs is already on a sustainable lifestyle therapy.
Well, we got to leave it there, but it's fascinating as these things become ever more prevalent, these semaglutide drugs, and now we've got the generic versions coming out in Canada. Just an interesting conversation to have. Dr. Tom Elliott, he's with UBC. He's also a medical director with BC Diabetes. Fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for weighing in today.
Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Well, we'll leave that there, but I'm hoping we can have some more conversations about this because I do think this is, a big societal moment, it seems, these weight loss drugs really taking off as they have been. And with the new generic versions in Canada, there's certainly some more conversations to have, and we'll keep following it. But today, we're out of time. Thanks for listening. Thank you to Morgana Adby for producing the show, and we'll talk tomorrow.